Tian is an assassin exploring the game world. Currently, he's doing a mission called Shadow Spider. It's a level 20 monster and should scare anyone. But Fang Tian isn't just anyone. He's lived in the game world for 12 years. 12 years ago, he was pulled into the virtual world, and the only way to survive was to carry out difficult missions. In a dangerous world filled with monsters, mutants, and even elves, it's unclear whether he's the predator or the prey. The only clear thing is the mission ahead of him. He must collect the poison of a level 20 Shadow Spider. For others, a very dangerous task. For Fang Tian, it's just another Tuesday. Fang Tian uses his swift blades to attack the spider, but the monster is as quick as it is large. He still has the upper hand though, as he tries to use the monster's size to his advantage. He might have done that successfully if he didn't get distracted by a notification for an urgent mission. The system urges him to quit the game immediately. Crap, just when the party was getting started. What's so urgent about this mission anyways? Since Fang Tian has the abilities of an assassin, he can slip through the grasp of the spider unnoticed and checks out what the notification is really about. After 112,129 hours, Fang Tian finally quits the game. The system transfers his body from the virtual world. It's a good thing he slipped away from the spider, as these transfers only work when a person is in non-combat mode. After 12 years in the virtual world, Fang Tian steps out into reality, a world which he vaguely remembers. Strangely, he received a quest in the real world. Oh well, he just needs to get this over with quickly. As he walks in the shadows, a man sneaks up on him and tries to hit him from behind. Nice try, but to survive in the virtual world for so long, you need to have sharpened senses. Fang Tian sends his blade to the edge of the stranger's throat. Wait, this is no stranger, it's Uncle Haboda. Uncle Haboda is the one who transfers missions to Fang Tian. This means he must have sent the urgent message to him in the virtual world. Haboda chuckles, impressed by the kid's awareness, and hands him a document containing the details of his new task. Fang Tian asks why the new task is located in the real world, and his uncle says it's a very special mission. Fang Tian opens the document and sees the trade union's president there. His task is to get close to the guy in the picture. The mission has long duration, so Uncle Haboda warns him to keep his secret away from others. His uncle asks him to keep his in-game abilities to himself, and instructs him not to log into the game the way he's used to. There's another way to log in? Fang Tian receives the task and, as an assassin would, tries to dispose of the source by burning the document. Clearly, he hasn't been listening to his uncle about using his powers. That's not all. Uncle Haboda also points out that Fang Tian's clothes look like he's cosplaying. The clothes are too flashy and would draw unnecessary attention. It's been 12 years, and Fang Tian has no clue what cosplaying means. With all the time he spent in the virtual world, Fang Tian would surely need some advice on how to adapt quickly to this world. Uncle Haboda steps up with his masterclass on how to adapt. He gives Fang Tian just 2 pieces of advice. If you feel nervous, smile. And if you ever want to pick a girlfriend in this world, make sure she has big boobs. Wait, what? Uncle Haboda says that girls with big breasts are usually not as smart as others. Intelligent girls are scary according to him, so Fang Tian must select one that isn't so smart. Okay, this is confusing. With that advice, Fang Tian is sent off to carry out his mission. Meanwhile, at the office of the commander of Region 3, the commander stares at a photo of himself and a man who strikingly resembles Fang Tian. He's interrupted by his assistant, who tells him that the police have finally found traces of the boy. It's Fang Tian, the one whom they've been looking for. Fang Tian is at the city's Western Police Department. The police have just found him and they are making the necessary calls to find his guardians. Fang Tian sits quietly in a corner, wondering how much of an act he must pull off to fool the commander. Rewind to a few hours ago, Uncle Haboda instructs Fang Tian to act like a slave. He must remember to play the role of a homeless child who was sold into slavery years ago. Knowing Tang Ran, he would probably take Fang Tian in, but he must play the role to perfection first. Haboda points out that this mission is a lot more complicated than his previous Shadow Spider mission, and he mustn't act before receiving the next order. Back to the mission, Tang Ran and his assistant arrive at the police station and request to see the boy immediately. There are no mistakes on both ends. This is T-27 from his mission, and this is surely the son of Tang Ran's friend. Fang Tian whimpers in a corner as a part of the act, and Tang Ran looks like he's buying it. The commander approaches the little boy and introduces himself as his father's friend. He says that he met Fang Tian as a little boy and offers to take him home. Bingo! Tang Ran takes the kid to his home and even lets him have a room to himself. What a generous man! Fang Tian sees a picture of his father with the commander. So, the man wasn't lying after all? Their mini bonding comes to an end when Tang Ran's daughter, Tang Qianqian, comes in to see the new member of the family. Coincidentally, she matches the description of Uncle Haboda's ideal girlfriend. Big boobs. She's also pretty and even more chatty. Tang Ran then leaves the kids to get familiar with each other. Qianqian introduces herself and suggests that they should stick together, as they are now members of one family. Fang Tian also introduces himself but does it awkwardly. Qian asks why Fang introduced himself like a professional NPC assassin in the game. Oh well, since we're doing games now, Qian introduces herself as a magician in the game. Fang acknowledges the magician but wonders what an NPC means. Oh boy, he's so far behind. Qian takes the weird but attractive boy to Shanglong's game store, and Fang Tian is not ready for what he finds in there. He sees a lot of people wearing VR headsets and sitting still. What is this place supposed to be? Qian explains that it's an internet cafe with a recent game called Magic. The popular game is very similar to reality, and you only have to put on the device to sign in. Fang Tian wonders why the game sounds so familiar to the virtual world he lived in. Qian pulls him out of his thoughts by suggesting he learns a little from today's games. Luo Jianbin from Qian's physics class comes in to interrupt them. He tells Qian that their physics class is losing 03 to the chemistry class, and part of the reason is that Qian didn't come early enough. Well, at least she's here now. Qian puts on a headset to face the chemistry class representative. It's a good opportunity for Fang to learn a thing or two. The players select advanced mode and sign into the game. According to Luo, Qian stands a higher chance of winning in advanced mode. This is because in basic mode, their opponent has much better equipment. But in advanced mode, both opponents are on level ground in skills, equipment, and attributes. The stakes are high in this match. A loss would see the physics class pay the internet fee to the chemistry class for a month. The match begins and is displayed on the screen. Fang Tian notices that it's a familiar arena from his virtual world. He wonders how they can be inside and outside the game at once. Qian makes the first move with Instant Fireball. This move should only be possible for those that are up to level 25. Her opponent from the chemistry class, Lu Jia, takes a lot of hits, but he puts up a strong shield to prevent critical damage. Lu Jia sees that the fireball attack is stopped. The magician must be out of mana. He rushes at her to attack. Big mistake. She uses Ice Ring on the unrushing warrior and stops him in his tracks. The physics class rejoices. This match is surely over already. Her strength is really impressive, as is the strength of other fighters in this world. However, the fight isn't over yet and Fang Tian can see Lu Jia preparing another attack. The Ice Ring attack should slow Lu Jia down and restrict his movement, but it looks like he's emitting red light from his body. Could it be a power-up? Whatever it is, Lu Jia easily escapes the ice circle trap set for him, and then he heads down towards to stun Qian. Qian can't avoid Lu Jia because of his speed, so she sets up an ice shield instead. The ice shield is of little help. Lu Jia easily breaks it from close range with a fiery attack and sends Qian crashing into the walls of the arena. With this attack, Qian goes into a dizzy state. She can barely move her body. Lu Jia decides the battle's fate by finishing Qian off with his hammer weapon. It's over. The chemistry class takes the win yet again. Fang Tian just saw Qian die in the game, and as he's not used to reality, he thinks that she must have suffered some damage in the real world. His surprise knows no bounds as she takes off the VR headset without so much as a scratch on her body. When he lived in the virtual world, death in there meant that you would also die in the real world. How is this different? Lu Jia comes over to make a victory boast, and the entire chemistry class taunt the physics class as they're 4-0 ahead. Qian is still bullish and she offers the last round to any members of the physics class who's willing to face Lu Jia. Qian's classmates are usually up for a game, but after watching her fight with the warrior a few moments ago, they'd rather not engage in a fight. Cowards if you ask me. Meanwhile, Fang Tian really wants to explore this new world and he needs to know whether he can keep a fresh body even after suffering damage there. As nobody from the physics class is willing to take the last round, Fang Tian indicates interest. He must have used a different tone to indicate interest because the entire class is now buoyant again and expect him to crush Lu Jia in the battle. Before going in, he makes it clear that he just wants to try it out. Oh well, he might as well have the headset since no one else wants it. He puts on the headset and it's a similar feeling to when he enters the virtual world. If there's anything different, it's the login interface. Fang Tian can barely keep up with it. He receives a match request from Yeman de Tanxi. He doesn't even know the warrior that Qian just faced. He just goes ahead to pick his profession, the assassin. As he selects the assassin profession, the game takes Fang Tian to the part where he must now pick his in-game skills and select his character. There are so many skills here. Fang had no idea that the game had these awesome skills. As he looks on at them, he gets lost in the moment. Oh look, it's a friend request from Tang Qian. He accepts, but it turns out that Qian only called him to draw his focus back to the battle ahead. The system also notifies him that his opponent is ready and that the match will start in 20 seconds. It's time to get to work. Fang Tian picks his assassin skills and is finally ready for battle. The arena for the competition is the Mysterious Forest. The Mysterious Forest usually gives the assassins the edge over warriors, so Lu Jia knows he must be careful, especially because he doesn't know what kind of skills Fang Tian selected. One thing is clear though, he must find Fang Tian first. Not even the spectators can see Fang. Could he have disappeared or something? Well, the forest is an assassin's joy. Let him play. Qian's friend and classmate, Luo Jianbin, already anticipates the result of the battle. The warrior is the natural counter of the assassin. This match would be over as soon as it begins. Meanwhile, the game has been on for a while now, but Fang Tian is yet to show up. Lu Jia figures his opponent must be an assassin. Why else would he not want to fight head on? Fang Tian stays hidden somewhere among the shrubs, observing his opponent. He notices that the warrior has a great stance, but this is the Mysterious Forest, and the assassin is unrivaled here. With that thought, Fang Tian sneaks up behind the warrior, aiming for his neck with his blade. He's so close, he surely has the warrior now. But to his surprise, he misses. No, he didn't miss. The warrior dodged the attack. How is that even possible? Lu Jia lets out a smirk, then sends the assassin flying with a combination of his high-class shield, tunis, and his powerful hammer. Okay, this guy needs to stop swinging his hammer like it's a spoon or something. The warrior has the advantage, as Fang Tian's health bar drops by almost half. Fang Tian doesn't understand why the warrior is so strong. Lu Jia laughs at the assassin. He must be a newbie. That's why he doesn't know that warriors are natural counters for assassin. As he has weakened Fang Tian physically and psychologically, Lu Jia sees no need to drag the battle any further. He aims to finish off Fang Tian with one last strike. And so, with his mighty hammer in his hand, he advances towards a helpless Fang Tian. It's over for the assassin, or at least it was before the system notified him about a literal game changer. The system offers him a newbie's test experience of non-regulation skills. Non-regulation skills? Fang Tian doesn't know exactly what that means, but if it can help against the incoming warrior, it's a yes. Fang Tian just unlocked freestyle mode for newbies, and he does it just in time, as Lu Jia immediately lands a finishing hit on the assassin. Well, at least that's what it looked like to the spectators. But why hasn't the system notified them of a winner yet? When the dust settles, it's difficult to tell whether Lu Jia is more shocked than the spectators. How did the young assassin thwart that attack? Could he be a freestyle player? Luo Qianbin and the entire physics class rejoice. Qian has finally found an expert player for them. Qian is more conservative. She's aware of the semi-freestyle mode that players can select to enhance their in-game abilities. But then, only expert players can activate the entire freestyle mode, depending on a player's ability to play. Could Fang Tian be an expert player? But if he is an expert player, why did he look so roasted just a few moments ago? Lu Jia shares their curiosity while in the game, but he has little opportunity to think in front of the freestyle player. He tries to calm himself down. After all, freestyle mode isn't that easy to use. Whoever made up that saying should be arrested because Fang Tian is totally in control of this mode. He uses his skill, strength, and speed to his advantage. The neck attack finally comes in as Fang Tian lands a critical blow on the warrior's neck. The warrior struggles to keep up and at this point is just chasing shadows. While Lu Jia's attacks have little effect on Fang, every attack from Fang is critical to the warrior. This battle looks like it's finally over. Warriors don't give up, and this one isn't planning to. As a last resort, Lu Jia uses his Iron Hammer Fierce attack on the assassin. It's an attack that no one ever saw coming. Even more surprisingly, the attack actually works. The system notifies the spectators that it's game over, and Lu Jia wins the round. Everyone is shocked. Even Lu Jia didn't think he could win the contest. As for Fang Tian, he might have lost the battle, but he confirmed what he was initially curious about. Now he knows that he can die in the game world without dying physically. This means that he can practice without worrying about anything. So he lost on purpose just to confirm this. He exits the game. It's mission accomplished for him. He apologizes to the physics class for losing, but they know they wouldn't have done any better. Tang Qian and Lu Jia aren't satisfied though. They approach Fang and ask what happened. Even though Lu Jia won, he knows he could have easily lost the contest. Fang Tian makes up excuses. He says his inexperience as a newbie cost him the battle. As Uncle Haboda instructed, he mustn't let anyone know his secret. After the pair finished at the gaming station, they head home as Tang Qian keeps encouraging him, saying he did good and the captain of the school even sees him in a new light. All this while, she never knew he would be that good and is currently pondering on how he could have been a freestyle player and an expert to land such critical moves and hits. On getting home to Tang Qian's surprise, her father was waiting anxiously and curiously for their return. Tang Ran, full of curiosity, asks his daughter where she took Fang Tian to. She replies saying she just took him to see how the city works and showed him around. Not an obvious lie, but not telling the entire truth as well, which was that she went to the game center with him and eventually made him game too. She answers while walking away, an effective way to escape further questioning. Glad that Fang Tian returned safe from whatever they were coming from, he proceeds to the main reason he was waiting for Fang Tian. Tang Ran had booked an appointment with a doctor, specifically a psychologist, as he thought Fang Tian was kidnapped and molested in unimaginable ways, just as planned. Tang Ran felt it was necessary to have all the supposed trauma in check, and so made that the first thing on the list for Fang Tian, as a true head of the house, and Fang Tian could see that now. Remembering that Tang Ran mentioned being a close friend of his dad and like family, Fang Tian asks him to tell him some or a little of what he knows about his father. Tang Ran, who wasn't expecting this question at this time, most likely hiding something or trying not to remember, just answers the question at the surface, but at the same time dodges it. He tells Fang Tian that they have been friends for 10 years, and his father's views are somewhat strange and special, so he tends to move away from those around him. Tang Ran answers this in an evasive manner and walks away to prepare for the appointment. Tian also remembers when he was younger in the virtual world where he asked his master at the time, Carl, and got a vague reply that he should just be aware that his father was a hero and died a hero, avoiding the question just like Tang Ran. At the doctor's, Tangran waits outside the psychologist's office while assuring Fang Tian that everything is okay and will be fine. After the reassuring, he guides Fang Tian into the room and waits outside for the session to end. While inside the room, the doctor makes his appearance and proceeds to inform Tian that he would be asking some questions. Tian, who had been a gamer and faced so many foes on quests and in battles, could sense something was odd with the doctor and his killing intent as well. The doctor is about to stab Tian in the back when Tian feigns letting his guard down, and at that moment, the tables turn as Tian pins him to the wall, asking who he was and who sent him. The doctor takes off a mask, and behind it was the face of Haboda, the man that assigned him the mission. Haboda commends his skill and reaction to the attack, though wondering how Tian knew it was a disguise, given he used the cursed mask, which is level 37 skill, that Tian should have no clue of. Tian explains that it was obvious, not enough to know who's behind the mask, but to know it was a mask and there's little he can do besides that. So he attacks when the chance shows itself. They talk about Tian's life outside the game and in the real world. Somewhere within this discussion, Tian tells Haboda the weird thing he had noticed about the game and how dying in the game doesn't affect the player in reality. Haboda explains to Tian that there are two ways to enter the game. The first is by entity, which he used to get into the game world at a young age, and the second is simulation, the means the other players used and what he just experienced recently. He also didn't expect Tian to have discovered this so fast and played the game in the real world so soon. Due to this development, Tian gets a new mission from Haboda, which is to infiltrate the game through simulation. At the same time, no one has to know how to use entity to enter the game. Meanwhile, this conversation happens on the inside. Tangran, who is still waiting outside, gets a call informing him that Area 3 of the virtual world, the area under his command, has just been attacked, with traces of obsession, leaving him to wonder why they would attack so soon. Suddenly, Tian comes out with the doctor, which is Haboda with the disguise back on. Tangran asks how Tian is, and he replies by saying he would have to come back once every week for checkup and assessment. The doctor also added that Tian needs to familiarize himself with the outside world, and slipping into the virtual world would go a long way in helping. This answer was just structured to help Tian get one step closer to achieving his second mission, and Tangran bought it, successfully hiding the main goal from him. They return home with the latest versions of gaming helmets to aid Tian's psychological recovery. Tang Qian brimmed with so much joy and excitement upon seeing these helmets in their hands, even though her father said it was meant for Tian and his improvement. Tangran has a huge fire he has to quench at Area 3 and informs his daughter that he'll be away for a while. He has to deal with business and she should not just play her head away but also look after and take care of Tian. I doubt she got any of that as she was already making her way to set up the gaming helmet. With just the two of them in the house, they talk about games he has played as Qian was dying to know how he could be a freestyle player and do what he did yesterday. She realizes he might just be a genius gamer when he tells her it's just one he had played since he was young. She asks how he did the critical hits yesterday and he says it's all instinct. After this chatter and agreeing to wait for him at the newbies arena, he enters the game after she does since he's a rookie at this. He chooses adventure mode on the game selection interface. The game system provides him with 3 options since he has an already existing record. The first is to delete the record and start fresh. The second is to begin from the previous location, and the third being leaving the game. Choosing delete would mean losing all existing data. Just as Haboda had told him earlier, he selects delete and the game deletes all data in his record and rebuilds the character. It sorts new data and asks for his player ID, which Tian, as unclimactically as possible, picks his name. He appears in a town which is supposedly the newbies arena that looks similar to the one he had entered in the virtual world while entering the game through Entity. All his stats have reverted, except skills he had honed for years. Soul Dagger, Soul Sneaky Hit, and Soul Chanting Master, which all remain. Soon enough, Qian notices him and grabs his shoulder from the back, frightening him a little. She decides to form a team of 2, intending to practice killing monsters and level Tian up to a reasonable level and amount of stats. Out in the field, she informs him that she train and teach him important things to know so he doesn't make major mistakes later. A monster suddenly shows up and Qian takes it out with ease using ice magic. Tian gains 3 distributing points from this, causing him to wear a confused look, making Qian explain. There are 4 main stat points: Strength, which determines the attack and defense; Intelligence, which decides the amount of MP and recovery speed; Agility, deciding the evasive ability and critical attacks; and Stamina, which gauges the HP. Starting players have 5 points for each stat, and when leveling up, 3 points are added. Wearing pieces of equipment that boost stats can also help in increasing one's stat points in the 4 areas. Qian intends to take him to level 10. Then he'll find an instructor to learn skills and receive tasks from. Another wave of monsters show up and Qian kills them effortlessly, adding experience points to Tian. When he has reached the basic skill requirements, he'll get access to professional quests and also find a professional instructor to pass down skills of that profession. A message comes in while they were facing monsters, and it was from Luo Jianbin, asking Qian to join them for a raid. Her presence was needed and she has to leave Fang Tian. She wanted to take Tian to level 10 so the NPC by the main walls could change his class at least. She also tells him he would need gold and more skills. She had successfully gotten him up to level 7. She added that he should head to the Tanthu village. There's an inventory upgrade quest in the tailor shop. He should find the owner of the shop, and she hurries off while he faces off the remaining beasts in front of him. He heads to the village while looking for a new weapon, as the dagger he was using proved inconvenient. He reaches the tailor shop and finds the owner Khan inside. Seems too easy, by the way. Tien asks him for the inventory upgrade quest, and since he already had all the items needed, he got rewarded with 1530 XP, leveling him up to level 8. He asks Khan for directions to get a good weapon. Unfortunately, the tailor had one, the tailor's dagger. Khan was willing to give Tien this, but after he finishes a quest. It is to deliver a letter from Khan to the little room in the forest. Along with the dagger, Tien would receive 2000 XP, which would rocket him to level 10. It didn't seem like a bad deal, and so Tien accepted and set off. Meanwhile, at the raid, Luo Jianbin asks if Fang Tian knew about the legendary quest of the newbie arena yet. Xian didn't catch on, so he had to explain. The boss, mysterious hunter Jane, with a super high attack, a player would lose half of their mana if they get hit by one of his arrows. There's no way to approach him, and if you die by his attacks, there's a 3-day ban from logging in. Only newbies can activate this, and it has never been completed because it disappears when they level up or if their class changes. Xian didn't worry about this because the probability of meeting Jane is less than 0.001, and she believes that Tien wouldn't be that luckless. On getting to the little room in the forest, Tien knocks but gets no reply. He opens the door as no one seemed to be around, and out of the blue, a gold head arrow comes flying out of the room at his face. Luckily, Tien is agile enough to dodge the arrow, but not enough to evade it completely as it scratches his face. Though it was a little scratch, the damage it did to Tien's HP was massive. What Xian thought would never happen just did. The one in the 1,000 players that would meet the boss this time is Tien. Lo and behold, Fang Tian is now facing the boss that Luo Jianbin had mentioned earlier, Jane Bran. Tien is confused and tries to explain that he means no harm and came to deliver a letter. Jane asks him to open the letter and read it. The next turn of events is shocking as Tien opens the letter to find out that the owner delivered him to Jane. The letter read, "The carrier of this letter has been brought to you by Khan." This is shocking as Tien never expected to be challenged or battle anyone by just delivering a letter. This made the rewards all make sense as 2000 XP is too big a reward for just delivering a letter. Jane is excited to test how strong the one Khan sent to him is. Tien gets the reward of 2000 XP and levels up to level 10. Next, he gets a prompt to accept or reject the battle quest to face Jane Bran. Seeing the situation he is in, he thinks about running away but decides to face Jane to test his strength at level 10 as well. He accepts the quest and Jane sends 3 arrows flying at him, which Tien managed to narrowly dodge. He steeled his resolve and decided to face Jane even if he dies in the process. It wouldn't be stealing his resolve as he was aware that even if he died in the game, he wouldn't die in the real world thanks to simulation. He readies his defense against Jane's next attack. Jane finds this interesting and decides to go a tad bit harder at Tien and sends a more charged arrow towards him. This also casts some kind of effect on Tien's agility, reducing it by 35%. This is caused by a skill used by Jane called the Assassin's Will. With a reduced agility, it would be undoubtedly harder for Tien to dodge the arrows now. Against the odds, when the arrow came off, Tien struggled but still managed to escape the arrow by a little gap. Jane is shocked by this as it would naturally kill a newbie instantly, but this particular one has something different, and it's at that moment that Tien realizes something. Tien sees the difference in their strength and the gap in their abilities. His attacks were unpredictable and Tien realizes his movements were being read like a book. It became pure instinct to run away and he was considering the best possible way to, as Jane wasn't one to just run away from, or a foe that would let you leave. Jane sees this reaction and understands it. He decides to pause their little fight and hands Tien her life recovery elixir, which adds 500 HP to the player that uses it. Jane also commends Tien's skill for being above a newbie level. He knows that Tien is strong enough to be able to handle the quest he has ahead. He asks him to come into the house, leading a phased Tien who just escaped death into the little room in the forest. Jane informs Tien that he needs a sidekick, and the battle that happened earlier was just a test of his strength. Turns out Khan picked right as Tien was strong enough for what Jane had planned. Jane introduces himself as a semi-elf, and he found notes that his grandfather left behind for him about a mysterious pathway in the forest mine outside the town. Due to Jane's investigations, he suspects that this passage leads to one of the 7 necromancers, La Fournel's secret research lab. The name mentioned sounded familiar to Tien, and from his virtual world, he remembers a great sorceress that turned necromancer with nobody knowing the reason. Having seen Jane's strength firsthand, he wonders why Jane would need a sidekick, so he asks why. Jane explains that there's a White Wolf Mooncaller, the level 10 elite boss who is always guarding the entrance to the cavern where the lab is. He needed Tien to act as bait and distract the wolf so Jane can kill it. Tien asks what's in it for him, and Jane explains that if he's lucky, he'll get to loot from the keepings of a necromancer and the unknown as well. He could even get the quill of a magic researcher, which would prove very useful. And if he doesn't, he'll have Jane's gratitude, which would also be useful if need ever be. Jane explains that during the quest, he would not be able to ascend to level 11 as the quest is only available for those at level 10 and below. Seeing that this was an S-rank mission which meant big rewards, Tien takes the deal and joins the quest. They both head to the passage to find the white wolf, Yahello, laying asleep on a rock. Tian notices that the breathing of the gigantic wolf is strange and asks to confirm that this particular wolf wasn't a normal advanced monster. Jane had been coming to the same place for 20 years, and every time he came to that spot, the wolf got stronger and stronger. He believes it's the result of the mains from the mining area nearby. They cause several variations in the wolf, causing it to abnormal growth and increase in strength. Tian realizes why this mission is an S rank one, and he starts to evaluate his ability to pull this off. For most of his life, he has only done B rank missions, and A rank ones are rare, so the S ranks are rarer, and even though they meant bigger rewards, the dangers are way higher than the ones he had taken. This particular one interested Tian as he was eager to find out what caused the variations of the wolf, as it would give them a better chance at better loot. Jane cautions Tian, saying he is sensitive to murderous air and that would be a skill he would use against any intruders. All Jane asks for is that Tian hold the wolf's attention for a while and hinder him long enough for Jane to find a chance and window to kill the wolf. Since Tian had no controlling or beast taming skills, his life is in Jane's hands, as if he took too long, Tian would be squashed and killed by the wolf mercilessly. Jane promises that he would kill the wolf as quickly as possible, as he shoots an arrow at the wolf which it dodges easily, awakening it and its howl. The wolf howls to alert and call its friends, the forest direwolves, which come around in their numbers. Tian and the elf are surrounded by direwolves, and they both work hand in hand to take out as many wolves as they can. During this trial for survival, Tian got bitten and got dealt 54 points of damage to his HP and slowed down by 70%. They both become very careful and wary of these wolves till they take them all out. After all the direwolves were killed, Yahello stands up with a destructive force and uses murderous air to reduce Fang Tian's abilities. The pressure from this air makes it difficult for Tian to focus or move at first, reducing his nimble ability by 35%. Tian realizes that if this goes on, he wouldn't last long enough for Jane to get a chance at killing the wolf, so he decides to attack. He sends a jab, but the wolf not only stood tall and giant-like, but was quick as well, dodging the attack and landing its paw on Titan, who is now in its field of sight. Luckily, Fang Tian can defend himself with his dagger, but cannot deny how strong this wolf is. Thankfully, he quickly weaves through the tiny opening left by the white wolf. Oh boy, that was close. The wolf sinks its claws into the ground and struggles to get it out. With that, Fang Tian sees an opening and can make a move. He skillfully climbs its claws and runs through the beast's hair, mindful of any side movements until he reaches its face. He has the white wolf right where he wants it now. With his new sharp blade, he stabs the creature right on the nose. The white wolf shrieks and the assassin smirks, a change of fortunes from a few moments ago. But in fights like these, you don't let your guard down for even a second. Big mistake, Fang Tian. The big wolf sinks its teeth into Fang Tian's belly, doing a lot of damage to the young fighter. The system notifies him that Wolf's recent attack reduced his movement speed by 70% and is inflicting constant damage. The last thing he needed was reduced speed. Just great. Fang Tian crawls behind some large rocks to hide. The fight wasn't supposed to last as long. Has Jane still not seen an opening to kill the monster? Jane stays still in the shadows. He must really be looking for that one perfect shot. In that case, Fang Tian is prepared to give him that one shot and finish the mission. He crawls out of his hiding place and calls out the white wolf. The wolf grinds its teeth in anger, focusing all of its attention on Fang Tian. The assassin is ready to face the monster head on. With his reduced speed, that doesn't sound like a good idea at all. It's a brave one though. Fang Tian and Yahello advance towards each other, and once they are in the same line of sight, a golden arrow pierces right through the fighters. The system notifies Fang Tian that the white wolf is dead, and then it also notifies him that he's dead after Jane's attack. What did the semi-elf just do? Jane comes out from the shadows holding his quiver. He almost lets out a smile. His plan worked. Fang Tian is logged out of adventure mode by the system. Since he was killed by Jane's arrow, he's now banned from logging in for 72 hours. S-ranked missions are really tricky. Fang Tian must now wait for 72 hours and hope that Jane keeps his promise by waiting for him. Can you really trust an elf? He logs out of the game and looks for Tang Qian. The commander's daughter is no longer beside him. She must have already logged out of the game. After a few moments of searching, he finds Qian at the door, waving goodbye to her father. Qian informs Fang that her father just left on a mission and isn't expected back anytime soon. Fang Tian wonders whether this mission would be related to what Uncle Habo Da mentioned the other day. He is snapped out of his thoughts by Tang Qian, who reminds him that Uncle Tang instructed that he's enrolled in school and that they would have to start tomorrow. School? That was not on the wish list. He has no choice though. If Uncle Tang says he must go to school, then he must. And so, he joins Tang Qian to go to school the next day. He's placed in Tang Qian's class. The class teacher makes him stand in front of the class and introduce himself. Luo Jianbin is surprised and excited to see the expert player. Meanwhile, the class girls check out the new boy. He's really handsome, but seems a little cold. The class teacher assigns him a seat just behind Luo Jianbin. After a while, the teacher leaves and the students can settle into their study group. Well, it's more like gossip groups, but okay. Luo Jianbin turns straight to Fang Tian. Now is the time to satisfy his curiosity. Tang Qian already briefed him about Fang's quest to level up, so he starts by asking how that went. He also offers to guide Fang Tian through the process. Fang bluntly refuses the offer and reveals that he cannot log in for 3 days after he was killed yesterday. That's when the conversation gets juicy. Fang tells Luo how he accepted the letter and avoided death from the archer's first shot. He further explains how the archer invited him to join his mission against the White Wolf, and how they succeeded but he got killed. If there's a story that has ever dropped Luo Jianbin's jaws, it's this one. He can't believe that Fang Tian just became the first person to complete the legendary mission. Luo Jianbin is at a loss for words to speak. He can barely process what Fang Tian just told him. It's the legendary quest. Thousands of players accepted the letter and got killed by the archer with a single shot. In fact, it's only thanks to Fang Tian that people are now aware of the next step after meeting Jane. Gamers have attempted that quest for the past 20 years and failed. And then there's this boy who passed the quest at the first trial and is just sitting like nothing special happened? Who exactly is this guy? Fang Tian keeps the conversation flowing. He tells Luo that this feels like a quest series. There would most likely be follow-up quests in the future. If the first part was that difficult, how much more could the follow-up quests be? Luo asks Fang Tian to paint him a mental picture of the expected rewards. At this point, Fang Tian doesn't really know what to expect. He must wait for 3 days before anything is certain. Even at that, his hope rests on whether Jane stays true to her word. Damn it, Fang Tian's adventures sound too juicy to be ignored. Luo Jianbin gets on his knees and begs Fang to make him a disciple. Not in a million years. The seatmates have become the noisemakers of the class, and Tang Qian has to come over and reprimand them. It is study time after all. There's another reason she approached Fang Tian. It's time for club activities, and Fang Tian must pick a club to join. She offers to give Fang a tour of the clubs he could join. Luo quickly cuts in, asking why would the game expert need a tour when he could just join the esports club. Clubs are school-organized groups that are about various interests for students. Currently, Magic is the hottest esports game. Even the government is organizing a national competition for potential gamers. After Luo's briefing, Fang Tian realizes that the story is similar to what was in Uncle Haboda's report. In that case, he decides to join the esports club. Unfortunately, their momentum is halted when they get to the building. The place is closed. For a super popular club, they sure need to work on their availability. They decide to check other clubs first. As they move on to other clubs, they fail to notice that they're being watched. It's Chen Yue, the vice president of the esports club, together with another member of the club. The other members identify Fang Tian as the freestyle player. According to him, Fang Tian and Tang Qian are players to watch out for. Chen Yue is intrigued by Fang Tian. It's really strange for an expert to appear out of nowhere. She looks forward to checking out his skills sometime in the future. A little while later, Tang Qian and Fang Tian are back home. Tang asks about the results of his mission yesterday and he updates her. She can no longer guide him for now, as she recently received a quest. Before leaving, she advises him to check out the game forum. According to her, he would find valuable information for newbies there. Oh well, all he has right now is time. Since he's away from the game for now, he might as well check it out. During the end of the first year in which the game was released, a huge bug suddenly appeared. Players used unique methods to log into Magic and bring back items from the game world. Monsters like Devilish Scorpion, a level 30 boss monster initially found in the game, also came in the same way. The violent Devilish Scorpion wiped out a small town as soon as it arrived. This incident rapidly sparked alarm and caused concern all over the world. After annihilating the Devilish Scorpion, the United Nations announced a prohibition of all unique methods used to enter the game. Offenders were liable to face the death sentence. At that same time, the United Nations launched Operation Butterfly to select talented players and send them into the game world. They allowed them to enter the game under specific circumstances, to act directly against potential threats. There has been no news since then. That's more information than Fang Tian expected to find on the forum. He checks the deployment of the operation and concludes that the target must be in-game NPCs. He wonders whether T27, Uncle Tang, is a member of this butterfly operation. Every piece of the puzzle seems to be fitting in now. For the next piece, he must play the waiting game for the next 3 days. 3 days cannot come quickly enough, and Fang Tian logs into the game as soon as the time is up. Jane promised to wait for him before exploring the mine. He can only hope that the archer stays true to his word. As soon as he logs in, he heads for the little hut where Jane stays. Thankfully, he finds the semi-elf sitting there, waiting patiently for his return. First of all, Fang Tian seeks answers on why the archer needed to kill him along the White Wolf. Jane explains that his skill requires him to lock onto a target for a long duration. If he locked onto the wolf, it would have noticed and made a move. That's why he had to lock onto Fang and wait until they were in the same line of sight. That was his golden opportunity. Jane hands Fang Tian the wolf's fang. The fang can be used for foraging, enchanting, and alchemy. Fang Tian can only think of 1 or 2 ways to make it useful, so he keeps the reward and joins Jane to explore the mine. Fang Tian stays ahead of Jane while entering the abandoned mines. After all, the punishment for his death won't be so fatal. They see armor on the mine floors and can tell that people fought here in the past. Next, they stumble across purple flowers on the way. Fang's appraisal skill is at level 0, so he can't identify the object. Thankfully, he's not alone. Jane says it's deadly nightshade, an essential ingredient for pharmacists. No wonder adventurers were illegally collecting items from the game. Finally, they get to their destination. They're in front of a sealed stone door. The system notifies Fang that he's been affected by the corrupted smell of the undead. His basic attributes will randomly decrease by 3 every 10 minutes. If there's something you don't want chasing your weakened body, it's the undead. Jane thinks that the stone door was built to prevent the corrupted aura from coming out. Whatever the necromancer left behind, the answer has to be behind the door. Raphael, the necromancer, is a half-elf like Jane, so he can decipher the inscriptions on the sealed door. The door starts to shine, and the system notifies Fang that his next quest is to attempt to break the seal. That shouldn't prove too difficult. The ground starts to rumble, and undead creatures crawl out of the ground and surround Fang Tian and Jane. How convenient. Jane says he can try to break the sealed door, but to do that, Fang Tian must buy him some time. There are lots of undead skeletons around, and it's now up to Fang Tian to keep them away from Jane. Oh well, when has he ever backed down from a fight? He picks up his sharp dagger and runs circles around the undead. He skillfully passes the knife between his two hands and the necks of the creatures. At this point, it just looks like he's showing off. He peeks at Jane's progress and discovers there is none. For all the elf's enchantment, the door doesn't seem enchanted at all. Jane tells Fang that it's a really complex seal, and after analyzing the surroundings, he can tell that there's a tier 3 undead wraith behind the door. A wraith? But physical attacks don't even work on the wraith. Must they really attempt to open the door? Speaking of attacks, Fang Tian points out that their stats are getting weaker by the minute, especially after being affected by the aura of the undead. The skeleton also keeps resurrecting, so sooner or later, they would be in a tight corner. Fang is right and Jane knows it. They must retreat first, then figure out how to break the sealed door. The archer's latest aim clears a straight path for them, and it's now or never to make a run for it. After running for a little while, Fang discovers that the skeletons didn't even attempt to pursue them. It looks like the undead skeletons are only active close to the seal. They can finally breathe a little. But their problems remain, as Jane points out that nobody in the town understands such a complex seal. If only there was an intelligent magician around. Oh wait, Fang Tian knows one. He contacts Tang Qian and shows her pictures of the seal. She identifies it as a level 6 seal but has no idea how it can be broken. Back to square one? Qian tells him that all hope isn't lost yet. He can ask for help on the forum. She says he would meet interested quest hunters but must be prepared to spend a fortune. Oh great, where is he supposed to get that much money? He fills Jane in about the result of his chat with Tang Qian. He asks where they could possibly get some gold coins. She points out that a few moments ago, he stepped on a gold mine. Well, in this case, it's more of a purple mine, the deadly nightshade flowers. Jane reveals that the flower can be used to make screaming potions to deal with wraiths, and it can also be sold for a large amount of money, as it's in high demand. The only problem is that not everyone can harvest nightshade properly, and improper harvesting could affect its quality. If only there was someone who lived here for a long time and possesses the harvesting skills. Wait a minute, that's Fang Tian. And so Fang gets to work using Jane's sickle. He gives Jane some part of the flower so he can make a potion for the wraith. Their next meeting is set for 2 days from now. The rest of the flowers he puts up for sale on the forum, hoping that someone could offer something substantial for it. Meanwhile, at the Star Guild, Superstar Shan Luolo is in a meeting with some important people. It's the president of the Star Guild, and he informs her of a purchase that he needs her to handle. Apparently, a player on the forum posted an item for sale. The president is willing to offer 30 million gold coins for a start. Whatever this item is, it must really be important. It's Deadly Nightshade, and Fang Tian is the player. It's a new day at Fang Tian's school, and as the teacher isn't in class yet, the students can form groups and make small talk. Luo Jianbin asks for updates from Fang Tian about his quest. For the 1000th time, he calls Fang Tian an expert. I guess that name would just have to stick. Fang updates him up to the point where he put up questions on the forum. Fang can't wait to go home and see the result of the question. Luo Jianbin is with a device and offers to help Fang check. For the first time, Fang accepts his help. They check the sealed door post first, but nobody has dropped any meaningful comment there. How disappointing. When they check the Nightshade post, Fang Tian can't believe how much the post is blown up. Luo Jianbin is shocked. He came across the post today but had no idea that the poster was the person seated in front of him. There are so many comments on that particular post. Some people even offered as much as 5 million gold coins for the flowers. Fang Tian really had no idea that the flowers were that valuable. Of all the comments on the post, one stands out in particular. The user introduces herself as Shan Luolo from Star Guild and drops her contact for Fang Tian to talk about the transaction. Wait a minute. The sexy portrait, the large eyes, the long lashes? The verified user tick? Did Fang Tian just get the attention of the hottest girl from City of Ruins? Luo Jianbin knows her very well and says that she's his idol. Since she seems legit, Fang Tian decides to check her out later. A while has passed and Fang Tian, together with Tang Qian, is back home. He decides to check out the forums in the game. At that moment, Shan Luo is at home discussing with her friend about the Nightshade. Her friend has her reservations, especially as the seller is a newly registered account. This could be one of those scams, you know? Shan Luo assures her friend that the tech team analyzed the Nightshade pictures and it was genuine. Also, their guild desperately needs the Nightshade, so they can be the first guild to clear a particular level. In that case, she's in luck. Fang Tian just sent a friend request. Shan Luo rushes with the speed of light and starts a conversation with Fang. Shan doesn't just want to buy his flowers, she is also keen to recruit Fang Tian to their guild, seeing how well he handled the Nightshade harvesting. Shen Luo gets Fang's attention by offering to help him decipher the seal if he accepts to work together with the Star Guild. By working together, she asks Fang to inform the Star Guild first if he finds any useful items. In exchange, they would help him if he runs into any problems. It sounds like a fair deal and he agrees to it. She also offers him 15 million gold coins. Fang Tian didn't expect to earn even close to that amount for just a few nightshade flowers. Previously, he had to rely on questing for money, which didn't really bring a good return. They decide to set up a meeting in the virtual world. Also, Fang Tian has one more request. It's a special request from Luo Jianbin, who considers Shen his idol. Just as agreed, Fang Tian and Shen Luo meet at the City of Ruins to make the exchange both sides wanted. Shen Luo, a popular streamer and a member of the Star Guild, had a separate intention, which was finding out who this Fang Tian is. Who exactly is this newbie player with amazing harvesting skills? From their conversation the previous night, she felt he is an expert using a burner account to not draw attention, which is very feasible compared to a newbie that's just awesome at harvesting. Shen uses her eye, a skill or rather a hidden ability to assess Tian's true state, level, and stats, and is intrigued to find out that truly he was a level 10 newbie. She tries to converse and flirt a little in a bid to know more about Tian, but Tian had other ideas and one of them was getting straight to the point. He cut her off short, saying introductions had been made the previous night and they should get down to business. Tian sends her an exchange request, his nightshade flowers for the gold and an alchemy scroll that can help open the sealed door, as the inscriptions were high level and need a scroll of the same propensity. She accepts the request while commenting on how cold Tian is. She explains how the scroll works as he would need to place it near the seal for it to open. Alongside the scroll, Shen tries to pitch him to join the Star Guild. She asks about him working together with the guild since there's been no issues for now. Tian remembers Uncle Haboda's advice on affectionate women and how dangerous they can be, so he remembers to stay far away and be careful of Shen as she portrayed that picture. Tian took to his heels, excusing himself with quest and work, saying he had a lot to do and quest to complete. He forgot to get the autograph his classmate had asked him to get, and even though Shen reminded him he hadn't gotten it, he waved it off saying it was meant for his classmate. This gave him a chance to refuse her offer as well as walk away from her, leaving Shen's interest piqued, enough to tail his every move as he wanted to see what made this newbie so special. Reuniting with Jane, Tian gets 2 vials of nightshade potion for killing the undead, and most especially the Wraith. Tian would apply this potion on his dagger, which would give it the ability to cause damage and kill the undead, making his blade lethal to the Wraiths and not just a chunk of metal. Both equipped and ready to go into the cavern, Jane informs Tian that he is being tailed and has been followed by someone for a while. Tian is already aware of this and tells Jane to ignore it, which he agrees to, affirming that if the person interrupts or affects the quest, he would be forced to obliterate the person. Meanwhile, Shen is in the shadows observing the duo and she recognizes that that's the level 10 elf boss Jane. She then understands that Tian has most likely gotten Jane's quest and that's the reason for his need for the alchemy scroll. They go in together, but this time they go in prepared, killing the undead with ease and surprising the secret observer lurking in the shadows. Getting to the door, the scroll did not do anything to the seal, and a prompt comes up saying the scroll can only be used by someone that has a high level MP, and thus a high number of intelligence points. As for Tian's current stat on intelligence, he needs about 2,000 intelligence points to be able to use the scroll effectively. The same goes for Jane, as he is unable to use the scroll for the obvious reason that he is a highly intelligent and flexible NPC, a non-playable character. With 0 choices left, he suggested they ask Shen Luo for help. Tian asks her to come out, but she refuses, thinking there's no way possible he could have spotted her, and he was bluffing. Next, Jane shoots an arrow at an area close to where she was hiding, threatening that if he shoots again, he wouldn't miss. This forces her to come out, denying following them for the time, but she willingly comes out to help when Tian asks for it. Jane affirms that they had known for a while, making Shen feel mocked that she had been deceiving herself all the way. Tian tries to understand why she was hiding to follow them. If she wanted, she could have followed them anyway. It's not like she's an enemy. Shen thinks this is a nice thing to say, withdrawing the fact that her impression of him was that he was cold. It was short-lived, as he follows next with if she tried anything, they could handle her easily. Shen explains that the scroll opens a high-level seal and so requires a high level of intelligence and MP to use. Tian asks why she didn't tell him, and the reason is because it was common knowledge. So shockingly, he isn't aware of that. She proceeds to activate and use the scroll and open the seal, and at the same time, the door that holds the army of the Wraith. Due to the army of the undead and the aura surrounding them, she casts a spell, covering the group under the light of holy buff. This surprises Tian, as it turns out she's a priest with the ability to use both light and dark dual abilities. Light for protection and healing, and dark for attack and dealing damage. The Wraiths come in full force, and Shen, seeing this, knows it's the smartest decision to run away and retreat. She is fully aware that normal weapons and pieces of equipment don't work or deal damage to Wraiths, so she opts to leave with the rest, but is shocked by what happens next. Jane lands a one-shot attack on the Wraiths, killing them at once, while Tian kills 3 to 4 Wraiths in one calculated move. This builds her impression of Tien being an expert, as this move can only be done by a player who freestyles, and only experts or genius players can do that. While fighting the wraiths, Jane notices a rancid odor emanating from somewhere, most likely a high-level undead creature, and asks Tien if he could smell it too. They proceed to the area and find a huge creature, a suitured monster by the name ManHwaCapped, a fearsome level 30 monster which lives with the purpose of fulfilling its master's every wish. Only Shun could assess this monster's strength using her eye, but the other two charged in with the usual plan of one distracting and diverting attention, and the other landing the killing shot. Usually, Jane lands the finishing attack, and Tien charges at the monster repeatedly and constantly giving slashes and cuts everywhere on its body, all while evading massive swings of the monster's huge butcher knife. Using the blade as a platform to propel, he stabs the monster in the neck in a bid to create a window for Jane and his attacks. Jane decides to get serious as he realizes that Tien is just a level 10 newbie, no matter how awesome and different he is from the rest. He readies himself to attack once Tien opens up a window for attack. Shun also gets the idea to support taking down the monster as well. She tries to ensure it using dark magic Admonish, but it doesn't work, which is surprising. It took a while, but she then realizes that this monster wasn't any ordinary monster. It was a spirit attribute monster. Seeing how dangerous it is, she tries to get Tien away from the monster, screaming out at him. Tien dodges a swing from the monster and with that stabs it again in the neck. This injured the beast in the neck and causes it enough pain to make it confused and unaware of Jane's incoming attack. Thanks to Tien, it was too late when it did, and Jane's one-shot attack makes a hole in the face of the monster. With just this play, they take out the huge unexpected spirit attribute monster. Jane falls on one knee as he was a bit exhausted trying to regain his strength. While Jane's tired, Shun's dazzled as she realizes that the two had taken down a spirit attribute monster, and not just that, the way Jane did it in one shot. How the hell do you one-shot a huge spirit attribute monster and deal it in just like that? She's marveled at the level 10 elite boss, Jane Brand. The monster's death left a putrid spirit cape. The cape is a rare item and a grade C item. The cape adds a boost to the HP, MP, and DP at 70 points. It also left a putrid key that would open a door soon. Now that all of this was out of the way, Tien asked what spirit attribute monsters are and what equipment with the same modification. This surprised Shun as she wondered how he would be an expert and not know about these monsters and how to differentiate between spirit attribute and non-spirit attribute monsters. She concluded that he's probably a genius player. At this point, she wants him to join the guild so badly as with the little tutoring, he'd be a great player that would contribute to the guild in immense ways. She explains that spirit attribute monsters are monsters that have a shroud of spirit energy coating their bodies and enhancing their abilities and stats. These monsters get more heightened abilities than normal ordinary monsters. He also asks about spirit attribute abilities, but Shun met this question with confusion as she had never heard of abilities being spirit attributed. He then explains that if there are monsters that aren't affected by magical attacks because they're imbued in spirit energy, then there are abilities and pieces of equipment that would harm these monsters. It's only normal for these monsters to have a weakness or have something lethal that runs on the same spirit attribution. The logic made sense, and she even heard rumors that someone was buying spirit attribute equipment in secret, leaving everyone clueless and some observative of the Monopoly building. Tien then realizes that he is getting the grasp of how this world works and how similar it is to his world, or more accurately, the world he lived in for the past 10 years. Soon enough, they get to a door that the putrid key opens, and with the key, they see the inside of the room while Jane walks in. When they try to move into the room, they are repelled by a wall of spirit energy. Due to the scroll they used and its effects, the duo cannot pass the field of energy. Jane could pass the field as he was an NPC, and the field blocks out players that simulate. Shun realized that the wall had a soul-locking seal, a seal that prevents players from entering a certain location in the game. It's used in many locations in the game, and this is one of them. The seal is of high-level inscription and a very strong spell at that, created by their soul. Its other function is to hold back the aura of the undead, which is catastrophically strong, causing chaos and damage. This rings a bell for Tien, and he whispers something into Jane's ears, an idea or a plan for the furthering of the quest, which Jane agrees to. Hopefully, it would eventually work out. Jane suddenly disappears, and the prompt from the system informs them that the Explore the Cave quest had been completed. It also carries the information that they could go through the wooden door for the next stage of the quest. Now, this wooden door gave a strange chilly feeling to Shun, as she knew something mysterious and harmful lay in wait behind it. She then appreciates the fact that he was willing to defend her when she voices her concerns. She hands him a teleportation scroll, saying they need to talk, but only when they are out of such a dangerous place. Shun sends him a friend request so they can keep in touch and asks him to teleport with her back to the City of Ruins, the capital. When she gets to the city, she searches and waits for him, but Tien never showed up. She then wonders if he doesn't know how to use a teleportation scroll, as he didn't know a lot of basics. She pulled up her message bar and texted Tien, only to find out he had gone offline even when she told him she wanted to talk. This made her slightly mad, as it was a similar feeling to a woman being stood up. This was a popular streamer in the game that the masses adored, by the way, and he didn't give her his attention in the slightest bit. Back to reality, Fang Tian hurries back to the house to check on Qian, and at the same time, he ponders on spirit attributes, monster, and abilities, seeing how closely related and similar the two worlds are. To test the validity of this theory, he decides to try entering the game again, not by simulation, but this time by entity. Another thing he ponders about is the soul-locking seal. Throughout his stay in the game for 10 years, he had never run into any ordinary or regular player like Qian or Shan Luoluo, and this was thanks to the seal. The soul-locking seal separated those that run on simulation from coming into contact with those that are in the game by entity, making the chances of bumping into each other limited, if not zero. He decided to use entity even though he was uncertain where Qian was or went and she would return. Uncle Haboda's instructions were to infiltrate the game using entity, but at the same time, keep it a secret from everyone around him. If he used it and Qian got back to meet an empty room with nobody in it, it would bring trouble and chaos. He decides to quickly get into the game, go behind the wooden door and get the quest done. He uses entity and enters the game as a whole. But something was different. His spirit attributed weapons and pieces of equipment remained, but the ordinary ones were nowhere near effective. Now in the game, he goes back to the cave and opens the wooden door, this time able to pass through the barrier seal blocking the passage. He opens the door to Jane chanting and in the middle of doing a ritual to imbue energy, and chanting so seriously and taking in specifically flames of the undead. Now the story of the great necromancer, Rafaela. Rafaela was a genius half-elf mage who sought power. She modified the seal inscriptions using the flames of the undead, and under certain circumstances, she turned herself into the first shadow elf to ever exist or walk the earth. Fortunately for Jane, she left behind things someone with a half-elf and half-human blood can use to transform into something more powerful. A shadow elf, and this was just Jane's plan for himself, transformation. These things and the spell can only be activated by one who is a half-elf. He tries to carry out the ritual, and after a lot of chanting and magic, he can just temporarily absorb the flames of the souls instead of transitioning into a shadow elf. Tian asks him if there's any other interesting things he had found. Jane found some magic items, but they are bound to the place and can't be easily removed. But there's something striking he had found. Rafaela had left behind a key. The key to the city of Sanctuary, which is the city she has been researching and wanting to know more about. Rafaela researched the city for quite a long time, calling it her life's work. She originally wanted to gain the powers of the Sanctuary to achieve her goals. Due to certain circumstances, she found herself in a dilemma, and one involving dark forces like the undead. She decides to gamble and take a chance at harnessing the powers of the dark, and so borrow the power of the undead to become the first shadow elf in China. Given that she was neither fully human nor fully elf, she got resentment for her quick right to strength and power from both sides, and as usual, she was segregated and scorned, making her the hidden necromancer that is feared. Back to the present, Tian received the key to the Sanctuary, a bank safe with the number 78 inscribed into it. The main quest finally gets complete, and a new one pops up due to the key. Tian is rewarded with the appropriate number of stats and attribute points, which is another thing he noticed. His attribute points do not change despite the mode of game entry. He gets a B rating for the quest and looks forward to the next S rank quest, investigating the lost key of the Sanctuary. Soon enough, the place starts to crumble, causing parts of the building to collapse. They get all they need and try to navigate their way out of the crumbling building. The seal inscription was responsible for keeping the aura of the undead that Rafaela used in check. As the aura couldn't be destroyed in ancient times, it was sealed by that energy, and now that it's sucked in, the building will come crashing to the ground in a brief instant. After escaping the crumbling cave, Jane realizes that he would have to look for a safer place to try transforming into a shadow elf again, as this area would be soon investigated by the City of Ruins when the news that the soul fire has been extinguished spreads. Jane acknowledges Tian for being different and an exceptional player. He owes Tian his gratitude, saying that he would repay him when the chance arrives. He also recognizes how important Tian was on the two quests, so Jane promises they meet again the next time, hopefully, when Tian is stronger. He disappears into the woods, and Tian gets rewarded with his gratitude and anticipation for the next quest, the City of Sanctuary. In the house, he meets Qian, who invites him to join her for the match they were having with the chemistry class that day, but he declines, saying he had a lot to do in the game, especially changing his class by the city's main walls. While in the game, Tian teleports to the City of Ruins where he would find the class trainers. He sets eyes on the statue of Delina, a fire mage who sacrificed herself to save the city from the army of the undead. The city guards inform him that the trainers are all at the new soldiers training camp in the northwest corner of the city. Tian follows this direction and eventually found one trainer of the assassin's class. The mysterious trainer asked Tian 3 questions consecutively, and he provided correct answers to all 3, making him gain the class Assassin. Under the overwhelming transformation of the trainer, he is brought to a menu of skills to choose from. The only downside to the game is these skills were very expensive, and Tian wasn't aware of that. His class changed and he got the assassin starting equipment and is to pick the skill he wants to purchase. Since money wasn't a problem to Tian, given his little nightshade potion marketing he did a while back, he buys all the available skills and they are equipped for him, with no actual training. It surprised Tian as he inquired if the trainer would not teach him any real skills. This leads the trainer to question what Tian thinks real skills are. Tian senses the trainer's bloodlust, indicating an imminent attack. He quickly spins his knife, attempting to stab the trainer. However, the trainer somehow swiftly evades the attack with incredible speed, leaving Tian puzzled about how he missed despite being so close. Impressed by Tian, the trainer instructs him to meet again once Tian reaches level 50, but his question goes unanswered as the trainer declares that the lesson for the day is over. Tian realizes that the skills he recently acquired lack the soul attribute and are essentially ordinary equipment within the game world. He understands that once he enters the game physically, these skills will become ineffective. Tian emphasizes that the game primarily focuses on the soul attribute, apart from equipment, and the only way to enhance strength is by learning soul skills. Initially considering requesting the trainer to teach him soul skills, Tian changes his mind and decides to focus on managing ordinary skills for now, with the hope of learning soul skills later on. As Tian takes his leave, he expresses gratitude to the trainer and promises to return when the timing is right. Tian is determined to quickly reach level 50, as soloing monsters is proving to be a slow process. Suddenly, he recalls Tang Qian's advice on the easiest way to level up, getting carried by someone. With this in mind, Tian ponders over whom he should approach for assistance, initially considering Tang Qian or Luo Jianbin. However, he remembers that they both have a chemistry class competition that morning. Consequently, Tian decides to approach Luo instead. He sends her a message and she receives it. Initially, she feels annoyed, wondering why he is seeking her out. Assuming he wants to explain his sudden logout the previous day, she chooses to read the message. Within it, Tian informs her that he is at the postal city of ruins and desperately needs her help to level up. In response, she angrily texts him back, telling him she doesn't have time because she's busy. In response to her text, he simply replies with the word, "Oh," leaving her irritated by his emotionless reaction. She questions whether he is overly sensitive to holding a grudge from just one word. Recalling her guildmaster's mission to recruit Tian, she texts him again, assuring him that she will meet him after completing her next match. With the prospect of someone assisting him in ranking up, Tian decides to spend his remaining time exploring the city. He remembers his master's advice that the tavern is a hub of intriguing information, particularly frequented by members of the Assassin's Guild who offer missions and intelligence for a price. However, his master warns him to be cautious as they may attempt to raise prices and gather information about him, urging him to speak minimally when dealing with the guild members. Tian discovers a tavern and requests 2 glasses of a drink called Red Massacre. The suspicious bartender wonders where Tian learned about this beverage. Tian pays no attention to the bartender's suspicion and instead inquires about the cost of obtaining information regarding the 4 best locations to level up. The bartender smiles and finds it intriguing that Tian is already familiar with how things are run in the guild. The bartender discloses the prices for the information, and Tian happily agrees to pay. He spends 100 gold coins to acquire the details, and in return, the bartender provides him with the quests necessary for leveling up. The bartender expresses satisfaction in working with Tian. Just as Tian is about to depart, he pauses momentarily and asks the bartender if he possesses any information regarding the sanctuary. After pondering for a moment, the bartender reveals that the information will come at a high price. Tian asks the bartender about the cost. The bartender says it will cost 1,000 gold for basic information about the sanctuary. Tian is shocked by the high price and says it's too expensive. He also mentions that he doesn't just need basic information. Tian decides to decline the offer and leaves the tavern. He starts looking for the central bank and realizes that all cities have central banks, and according to the quest notification, the key should be for the safe in the central bank of the City of Ruins. Tian recalls that Jane mentioned an incident in the past that interrupted Rafaela's research, leading her to store all of her research in the bank safe. He wonders what her research might have been. Upon entering the bank, Tian heads straight to the counter. The female representative asks how she can assist him, and Tian shows her the gold key, explaining that he needs to open the corresponding safe. She is surprised because having a gold key means you are a VIP gold member. In response, she guides him directly to the vault area, where a man checks the authenticity of the gold key. Once he verifies that it is genuine, he informs Tian that he has already paid for a 300-year lease. However, because he is a gold member, they have extended the lease for another 300 years. The female representative then informs him that in order to retrieve his stored items, he must pay the lease fee, which amounts to 1,200 gold coins. Tian expresses his concern about the high price, and the representative explains that if he does not retrieve his lease by the next day, his 600-year lease will expire. According to the contract, at that point, the items will become the property of the bank. Tian starts to wonder if it's just a coincidence that the lease is ending the next day, and he also questions if Rafaela's research is truly worth 1,200 gold coins. Then he remembers that retrieving the items in the safe is part of his quest, and completing it will allow him to level up. So he decides not to miss this opportunity. He finally requests them to open the safe and they comply. As he enters, a system notification informs him that he has acquired an ancient chest. When he opens the chest, he finds a peculiar journal and immediately receives another system notification stating that he has obtained research materials. Tien sits down and starts reading the journal. In it, the journal mentions that numerous cultures were established 300 years earlier, when humans, elves, dwarves, and various other creatures coexisted. Humans combined mechanization with alchemy to create alchemical creatures, refining warriors with immense faith. This resulted in the creation of an unparalleled sanctuary civilization. These advanced alchemical creatures allowed highly devoted individuals to maintain their self-awareness even after transformation, significantly amplifying their power. Their power grew tremendously, and they possessed boundless vitality as long as they had sufficient energy. Despite the sanctuary civilization having a long history, it vanished for unknown reasons, much like many other civilizations throughout our past. However, Raphaela's research uncovered a clue suggesting the continued existence of some sanctuary members. She believed that the sanctuary did not truly disappear, but rather became sealed within another spatial temporal dimension. In her quest to obtain the alchemy's golem's power and achieve eternal life, she journeyed to the far north to seek the remnants of the sanctuary. Unfortunately, that place has long been reduced to ruins. Once Tien finishes reading the journal, he begins to sense an unusual aura emanating from within himself. He receives a notification indicating that he has acquired new skills: Soul Elementary Alchemy, Soul Create Gargoyle, and Soul Alchemy Puppet Control. Elementary Alchemy. By using this ability, you can use all sorts of alchemy seals. Create Gargoyle. The user is able to create low-level gargoyles. And Alchemy Puppet Control. This ability allows the user to control 3 alchemy puppets. Tien is amazed by his ability to acquire 3 powers simultaneously, just by reading the old book. It dawns on him that apart from being an assassin, he has gained an extra class, which is the Alchemy Puppet Master class. Tien decides not to pay attention to it. Instead, he focuses on creating gargoyles. His plan is to make enough gargoyles and command them to defeat monsters for him. By doing so, he believes he will be able to increase his leveling speed. Meanwhile, Luoluo finishes her match and immediately teleports to the Stars Guild. She sends Tien a message, letting him know that she is done and willing to help him level up. However, he responds by saying he wants to level up later. At the moment, he needs 100 units of mercury, wood, stone, and a high-level alchemy rune. Surprised, Luoluo asks Tien what he wants to do with those items and questions if he wants to take advantage of her. She wonders what kind of high-level creation he is attempting that requires such rare materials. Curious, she asks him what he is trying to make, but he replies that it's a secret. Determined not to give him anything unless he tells her, Luoluo stands her ground. Eventually, Tien gives in and reveals that he wants to create a low-level gargoyle, urging her to keep it confidential. Luoluo is surprised and curious about how Tien always manages to obtain high-level items. Tien explains that creating a gargoyle is expensive, requiring around 10 gold, and he has almost exhausted all his gold reserves. Feeling sorry for Tien, Luoluo decides to sell the runes for 1 gold each. She agrees to meet him later at the Artisan Temple in the City of Ruins, after collecting all the necessary materials. Tien recalls that the skill description states a 30% success rate for making a gargoyle, so he wants to increase the chances to test the gargoyle's combat abilities. When they meet, Tien asks why Luoluo brought him to the temple. She informs him that players often come there to create potions and other items, as it boosts their success rate by 1 to 5%. Tien mentions the high cost associated with the place, but Luoluo reveals that she has already paid for it and even provided him with some free items. However, she asks him to repay her kindness. Tien wonders how he can do so, and she requests the alchemy blueprint he used to learn gargoyle creation. Tien explains that he has already learned the blueprint and can no longer trade it. Nevertheless, Luoluo is delighted to hear that he can trade the gargoyles. She explains that if the gargoyle he creates is satisfactory, she will need him to create one for the guild in the future, without any payment from him. She leads him to a room where she has arranged the necessary materials. Tien attempts to activate the items, but they explode in his face, indicating his failure in the initial trial. Luoluo becomes concerned as each failure results in a significant financial loss. Tien realizes that random attempts won't be effective, so he resolves to devise a strategic approach by harnessing his chi to control the flow of the rune's energy. He makes one more attempt, and thankfully, the endeavor is successful. Luoluo cannot believe that Tien actually accomplished it. She asks him if he obtained anything valuable, and Tien informs her that he obtained an alchemy card. Intrigued, Luoluo examines the card and is astonished to discover that it is a summoning card. Suddenly, Tien receives a notification stating that he has unlocked a hidden attribute, allowing him to activate the card using chi, which he can now utilize to summon the creature he created. Tien believes it's acceptable to use chi since his uncle never forbade him from doing so. Apart from abilities, there are also card items in the game. Card items usually come with special abilities. Curious, Tien asks Luo if she is familiar with Chi, but she admits that she is not. Therefore, Tien decides to employ intelligence points instead. He gives it a try and successfully summons a gargoyle. Luo evaluates the stats of Tien's gargoyle and concludes that although it may not be particularly powerful on its own, as his alchemy skills improve, the level of the gargoyles he creates will increase. Excited, Luo takes out her camera and snaps a photo of the gargoyle, expressing her desire to send it to the guild for analysis by the guild leader and others, in order to explore the possibility of forming a gargoyle team. Tien notices that the gargoyle doesn't appear to be exceptionally good, despite his increase in gargoyle creation ability from level 1 to level 2. However, his success rate has improved slightly, so he decides to quickly utilize the remaining materials to create more gargoyles. On their journey to level up, Tien realizes that carrying the gargoyle around the city openly draws too much attention. He expresses his disappointment at not being able to store the gargoyle after summoning it, considering its movement consumes energy and overall seems not worth the effort. Suddenly, an admirer of the gargoyle approaches Tien and inquires about its origin and whether he's willing to sell it. However, Luo intervenes, stating that the gargoyle is a quest reward and she cannot disclose further details. Tien then asks Luo for assistance in leveling up, as he has a quest to eliminate 99,999 monsters. She explains that once a player ventures outside the beginner's village, killing monsters that are 10 levels lower results in an experience penalty. Additionally, she warns that Tien's attack damage is too weak, and they will easily perish if they fail to defeat a monster since they are not built as tanks. She further cautions about the game's strict punishment system, urging them to avoid taking excessive risks. Tien inquires if Luo knows any area where they can weaken monsters until they have very little health left, allowing him to finish them off in a single strike, thus ensuring all the experience points go to him. In response, Luo assures him that as long as he lands the killing blow, he will receive the experience points. Furthermore, she claims to possess a ring with the ability to emit holy light, which deals damage to creatures within its range. Tien takes Luo to the Lost Valley, a place filled with dangerous desert lizards. Luo starts complaining about how these lizards have a remarkable ability to resist magical attacks and are also poisonous. The Lost Valley is the habitat of the poisonous lizard. They have high resistance to magical attacks and can also deal damage to your stats greatly. Tien shows her that he already has knowledge about the lizards by telling her exactly how damage from the lizard can affect a player's stat. She questions him about his extensive knowledge of the lizards, wondering how he became so familiar with them. Tien reveals that he had done thorough research beforehand, understanding exactly how these creatures can harm a player's statistics. He further informs Luo that despite the resistance, the lizards have a relatively short lifespan, and their tails hold great value. This means they can be defeated swiftly, saving a considerable amount of time. Additionally, Tien mentions that the map he obtained from the bartender at the Assassin's Guild hinted at the possibility of finding fragments within the Desert Treasure map. Tien explains that collecting 15 fragments from the Desert Treasure map will enable him to uncover a hidden treasure deep within the valley. He advises Luo to focus on healing while he assesses the lizard's strength. Despite her warnings against a direct assault, Tien disregards them and activates a stealth mode to approach a group of lizards. This perplexes Luo, as stealth mode is typically used when remaining stationary. Seizing the opportunity, Tien swiftly strikes one of the lizards in the neck with his knife, catching them off guard. Tien skillfully slices the lizard, gradually moving the knife from its head to its tail. He acknowledges the expensive cost of the map, but affirms its value, as it accurately indicates the weak spot of the poisonous desert. The lethal area of the lizard lies along its spinal cord, extending from its neck down to its tail. In a defensive move, the lizard tries to spew venom at Tien, but he skillfully dodges it and swiftly defeats other lizards using the same technique. From a distance, Luo observes Tien's impressive ability to defeat monsters that surpass him by 20 levels. Tien approaches Luo and inquires about the damage her divine punishment inflicts with each strike. She reveals that it typically deals around 700 points of damage, which increases to approximately 1000 points on a critical hit. Tien deduces that the poisonous lizards primarily attack using their forelimbs and venomous attacks. He informs Luo that the lizards possess roughly 1200 life points, which is advantageous as she draws them towards Tien while he finishes them off. Luo carefully considers the situation and concludes that if things are as she believes, then Tien's single attack should inflict at least 500 points of damage, potentially resulting in an instant kill. Tien, however, reassures her by explaining his passive ability that enhances his damage output with each critical strike he lands. He assures her that when he goes all out, she will be perfectly safe. Upon hearing this, Luo feels a sense of relief. Tien resumes his quest of attacking lizards, and as they encounter one, Luo uses her magical skills to weaken them, allowing Tien to finish them off. They continue this process, gradually accumulating up to a 100% increase in critical damage. Impressed by Tian's strength, Luo expresses her confidence in him, stating that he would be a dependable teammate in a team fight. Shortly after, Luo receives a call from the guild leader, prompting her to halt the battle. Tian curiously asks why she stopped, and she explains that she needs to have a private phone conversation with someone. Instructing Tian to collect the dropped items and store them in his inventory, she asks him to do so while she regains her focus. While storing the items, Tian comes across an unfamiliar object in his inventory and becomes curious about its identity. He examines the item and discovers that it is a fragment of a desert valley treasure map. To assemble a complete treasure map, he realizes that he will need to gather 50 such fragments. While on the phone call, the leader of the guild informs Luo that the intelligence team has thoroughly analyzed the materials concerning the gargoyles. Based on their analysis, they have reached a decision to establish a gargoyle army. The leader explains that although the individual strength of the gargoyles may be relatively low, their sheer numbers will compensate for it. The guildmaster firmly believes that gaining control over the gargoyles will significantly contribute to their goal of becoming the ruling guild, especially as they strive to be the first to conquer level 60. Instructing Luo, the leader emphasizes the importance of recruiting Tian, highlighting that their success can only be guaranteed if he is fully aligned with their cause. Luo promises to fulfill this mission. After concluding the phone call, she gazes at Tian and wonders how she never anticipated that a beginner at level 10 could offer her the opportunity to ascend in power. Determined to expedite Tian's progression to level 60, as it will greatly aid in accomplishing the guild's overarching objective, she decides to ensure his swift advancement. Perplexed by her unwavering gaze, Tian questions her, prompting her to feel embarrassed and dismiss it as nothing. Proposing that they continue their leveling journey together, she suggests that they proceed. Tian receives a phone call from Tang Qian, who's surprised by Tian's sudden progress to level 20. Tian explains to Tang Qian that someone is assisting him, which is why he has been leveling up quickly. Tang Qian expresses admiration for Tian's progress, but advises him to log off soon and join her for dinner. Tian apologizes to Luo for needing to leave, and they plan to meet later in the evening. As Luo departs, Tian asks her about the potential rewards of collecting all the treasure maps. However, she cautions him not to get too absorbed because the drop rate of the fragments decreases as more is collected. If the time limit is exceeded, all the fragments would be lost, and as a result, no one has completed the quest before. Tian concludes that essentially, nobody knows what they will receive after gathering all the fragments of the treasure map. Fang Tian is back from the virtual world just in time for dinner. While him and Qian sit down to eat, she brings up their victory over the chemistry science team. There's more. The vice president of their school's esports club came in to watch the two science teams battle. It turns out seniors in the clubs have graduated, and the esports club will need new recruitments. Qian feels she might be a potential candidate for the club. To that effect, there will be a competition and Qian tries to persuade Tian to partake in it so they can have the status of two advanced players from the physics club. Fang Tian decides he'll think about it as something else might come up to preoccupy his time. Qian, on the other hand, is very excited about the competition and tells Fang Tian she'll be preoccupied practicing hard for it for a couple of days. Fang Tian reassures her to look into participating. He then realizes he's gotten stiff and out of shape since technically all he seems to do is sit and play virtual games a lot. He decides he'll go out for a little exercise to get back in shape. When he does, a young child approaches him with a letter. When Fang Tian asks who has sent the boy, the child declares it's a stranger. The letter reads Esports Dragon 3. It's enough to pique Fang Tian's curiosity and push him to make the final decision of joining the competition to find out who is Dragon 3. Fang Tian goes back into the virtual world to pick up where he left it off with Lolo. She tells him there's about to be an open broadcast. Of course, Tian has no idea what that means. She gives him a brief description explaining it means every gamer is like on live television with their every move for everyone to see. Inwardly, she's thinking of how to salvage the situation. If the broadcast happens, everyone will get to see just how valuable Fang Tian can be, and that would mean different guilds would try to snatch him. She decides she has to act fast and smart. She tries to persuade Tian once more to join her guild, and this time, it works. He agrees. Lucky her. Lolo is overexcited but plays it cool, telling Fang Tian that the normal initiation process includes assessing his strength and qualities, but since she's seen all that firsthand, the next step would be to put in a recommendation for him. And just like that, Fang Tian is now a member of the Star Guild. Fang Tian is in the mood to get things moving fast, but Lolo wants to broadcast her new achievement first. Her fans eagerly watch what's about to unfold. This newcomer? Just how strong is he? Their quest in the Forsaken Valley resumes. The monster lizards aren't dead yet, but that's not a problem. The broadcast effectively shows Lolo and Tian working as a team to slice them up. All of a sudden, there's a vibration and it seems it's caused by a level 30 boss poisonous scorpion. It needs a level 40 team with 5 members to defeat it. It's a perplexing situation, but Fang Tian steps up to try and be the hero once again. Lolo feels trying to take on the scorpion monster on their own is crazy, but Fang Tian reasons if they defeat the monster, they'll get a lot of game rewards. And if they lose, well, it's not like there are any serious consequences like actual death. Plus, it makes for good entertainment. There are a good number of engaged fans. Lolo gives in. Meanwhile, Fang Tian is already strategizing. The scorpion monster has a hard shell covering that provides a high defense. If he's going to weaken the creature, he has to keep his strikes in a constant combo. With that, he begins his attack, landing a Shadow World Thorn combo. There isn't any information on this particular monster in the book Duke gave to Fang Tian, so he needs to think hard if he's going to win. Just then, Lolo calls out to him that the scorpion's weakness lies in its belly and tail. With this new information, Fang Tian slides under and sinks his daggers into the scorpion's belly. It's a good critical hit, and he goes on to land several more pierces. Engaged fans are eating the show up. Even Lolo is entertained. Fang Tian is one hell of a rookie. The health bar of the poisonous scorpion reduces, but it seems it's increasing just as fast. And at this point, their strikes won't be as effective if they keep up this way. There has to be a new strategy. Just then, Fang Tian remembers the gargoyles. Fans are surprised. Who is this guy? A summoner? An alchemy puppet master? What's about to happen? The gargoyles come flying at Tian's call and attack the scorpion. Tian joins too, landing several strikes, but it's clearly still not enough. Smaller scorpions erupt from the desert, and the sand itself begins to sink Tian in, reducing his speed movement by 3. Not only that, but hand dust comes into the picture, which decreases the hit rate of magic and ranged attacks by 50%. Fang Tian then thinks to himself, all these must be a distraction by the boss scorpion because its resistance is currently at its weakest. Fang Tian then goes in with a ferocious attack, starting with a dig of his dagger from the scorpion belly from top to bottom. With that, the boss scorpion is defeated. Defeating the scorpion has come with a handful of rewards. Most of them, Lolo regards as level 40 to 50 ordinary equipment. There are 2 rewards, however, that she's not sure of their purpose. A key and a powerful soul of someone who is regarded as a friend that studied alchemy and necromancy. Fang Tian declares he has no use for most of the items and decides to sell them, but to keep the 2 unknown. Fang Tian then announces he's gathered all the fragments of the treasure map from the Valley of the Forgotten, but there's been no prompt from the game system on what to do with it. Lolo is shocked to learn this and wants to see for herself. Fang Tian lays out all the fragments. There's really no numbering or symbols to know how to piece the map together. Neither do the fragments come in the shape of puzzle pieces that he can try to piece together. Engaged fans share their opinions on the situation. One fan advises to go to the Alchemy Wood Guild to find someone to ask. Another advises to use a magnifying glass. The opinions get crazier from then on. Fang Tian, however, stays focused. He remembers something his uncle had said about treasure maps that have been marked, and only by reading the mark can you see the map. Fang Tian wonders if that strategy applies here too, and there's only one way to find out. It takes a lot of brain work and energy, but Fang Tian starts to see a pattern on each map fragments and begins to put them together. At some point, the consumption of the reading exceeds his load, but he pulls through. The map is ready. The game system prompts that he has successfully cracked the letter contained in the treasure map to get the complete treasure map 3 Breaths of Family Life. With that, an underground passageway is revealed. Lolo reveals that they have a rather strange task ahead. She's about to say more when she notices Fang Tian doesn't look so well. She asks if he's okay, and he tells her he's fine. Inwardly, he reasons he can no longer use the neon as it is causing an overdraft that could affect his life safety. Lolo asks if they should be going down this mysterious passageway that has opened up. What if there's a monster tougher than the boss scorpion and their luck runs out? Fang Tian responds with a yes. There's a time limit in the sealed lands, so it's now or never. They start down the passage, but then Fang Tian stops so abruptly that Lolo, who was trailing behind, bumps into him. What could be the issue? Luckily, it's just a low-level cave rat that Fang Tian easily kills with the throw of his dagger. They proceed, discovering 3 tombs. Lolo wonders why crazy stuff seems to happen when she's with Fang Tian, but obviously she keeps this thought to herself. Fang Tian approaches the tombs and examines the gold designs on them, wondering if they're for decoration or something else. The coffins themselves seem to be made from a special material. Fang Tian wants the coffins opened. The worst that could happen would be the death of their in-game characters, which would be resurrected in 3 days. Lolo does her thing, and the game system prompts she's triggered a special task with the task name Sealed Coffin. The description of the task is to follow the guidance of the map. They found 3 coffins and they are to kill... The description is cut short, and there are several new prompts warning that there is an abnormality with the game. Lolo has no idea what is happening, but Fang Tian reasons the problem is with the coffins. The coffins open, revealing a mummy. Fang Tian is quick to strategize. Now that it has only just awoken, they should attack first because it's at a vulnerable state. They then swing into action. Lolo releases a laser beam from her staff that the mummy easily crushes with his hand. Wow, this is about to be some high-level battle. Next up is Tian with the sneak attack that the mummy already sees coming. There's more. The mummy speaks. It basically calls them intruders. The mummy, a second-order combat unit of the undead race with a powerful soul trapped within. Back in reality, at the Sichuan's fierce command, the commander hasn't slept in days. He's been watching his screen. His personal assistant wants him to take a break, but he refuses, stating they need to prevent the scorpion incident from repeating itself. His assistant expresses there haven't been any funny situations recently, and the whole situation is just perplexing. The Forgotten Valley is just supposed to be an avenue to spawn monsters and level up. The abnormality in the game is beyond comprehension, and the commander can't rest till he finds a solution. Back to the virtual world, Lolo lets Tian know the mummy must be an NPC with high intelligence because of its ability to recognize them as aliens or intruders. The mummy is not just any S-rank elite NPC, he's rather strong. The mummy reasons since they're foreign people, they must have the keys to unlock its chains and the chains of the other two mummies. Fang Tian remembers the unknown key he'd collected as a reward from defeating the boss scorpion. It's now hanging as a pendant over his neck. The key now has a use, it seems, because the mummy really launches towards it, momentarily forgetting it is still chained and the key is far out of reach. It wants the key bad though. In exchange, Fang Tian can have whatever he wants in respect to strength and wealth. The mummy wants the key so bad that he offers to be Fang Tian's servant if only it can be released. Lolo analyzes the situation. Recruiting this high-intelligence mummy is a definite win. It would increase Fang Tian's strength. She tells Fang Tian the deal is one he should consider for their mission, which is still far from completed. Fang Tian doesn't trust the mummy, rightfully so. He wants a soul vow the mummy can't go back on. It seems it's a wise move. Once the soul vow is signed, control over the mummy's life or death is merely in Fang Tian's thoughts. Turns out the mummy is a tricky, cunning one. It doesn't actually want to be a servant. He expresses this by letting Fang Tian know there's several other ways he can get the key. Fang Tian springs to action. Where he's concerned, there's just one way to this key. Fang Tian jumps out of the way of the mummy's spell, but Lolo isn't as lucky. She's immediately bound and in a state of imprisonment, and can't use her magic to dispel it. It's a state of indefinite imprisonment. Fang Tian recognizes Nian in the mummy's spells. That's why Lolo's spells would be useless against it. Thankfully, the mummy's chains contain its power, so its casting range is limited. Furthermore, since Lolo is the mummy's captive and opponent, Tian can't just rush forward to attack. It's yet another perplexing situation that leaves Fang Tian contemplating. The mummy brings up a new deal, and it is rather interesting. Lolo's life for the keys. Lolo warns Fang Tian not to consider the exchange. Honestly, it would be rather out of character if he does. She goes on to say the mummy is just trying to be extra tricky and cunning, and there isn't much a chained mummy can do anyway. The mummy starts to show there's no bluff. It makes the bond strapping Lolo begin to have an effect. Her blood volume isn't dropping, but her HP limit is. Lolo reminds Fang Tian that there isn't a big deal if she dies. The worst is a temporary logout lasting 3 days. Maybe she shouldn't have said that out loud, because the mummy decides to bound her soul to her character. If she dies here, she dies in the real world too. The atmosphere immediately becomes tense. Fang Tian decides he'll agree to the mummy's terms and conditions, whatever they are, if he releases Lolo. The mummy haggles he wants the key first, then he'll let her go. Bold move. Fang Tian haggles there's only one key. If Lolo dies, the mummy can kiss the key goodbye. It works, and the mummy frees Lolo, her weak body stumbling into Fang Tian's arms. The mummy expresses it just wants to be free and isn't really looking for enemies. Lolo expresses her doubts about if any sort of trade with mummy is wise at this point. It's a big risk, but Fang Tian decides it's their best option. They'll need to evacuate the premises quickly once they hand over the key to prevent any further plot twists. Spoke too soon. Just as Fang Tian is about to hand over the key, an arrow goes flying near his face. An archer? The archer warns Fang Tian not to hand over the key. Even the mummy is surprised how this new character has shown up. Who are they? They have a killing intent, Fang Tian notices, so they must be an assassin. Is it Tang Ran? Just before the assassin can land a sneak attack, the mummy reacts. From Fang Tian's analysis, the assassin's murderous aura leaked, and the mummy was able to sense it in time and defend itself. The assassin didn't come alone, but with a soldier, and together they go neck to neck with the mummy. It's an opening for Fang Tian and Lolo to escape, and the assassin lets them know, asking that Fang Tian carries Lolo to somewhere safe. The assassin promises to handle the mummy and asks that the about-to-be escapees not mention any of their adventures in the sealed lands to anyone. Fang Tian wishes the assassin and the soldier luck and turns to leave. The mummy screams at them to stay. How can it possibly let someone who finally has the key just leave? It tries to bargain once more, promising to give endless power. It's a failed trial as Fang Tian expresses he's not interested. Fang Tian is able to escape out the sealed lands with the still limp Shen Lolo in his arms. He's now back in Forgotten Valley, trying to assess the situation. How badly has the mummy's Nian magic affected Lolo? At least he has faith that the assassin and the soldier will handle the mummy efficiently, because they seem to possess high-level skills. Meanwhile, another day at school, Luo Jianbin approaches Fang Tian excitedly, telling him he's received an autograph from Shen Lolo, his idol. Fang Tian tries to recollect his thoughts. After Shen Lolo's near death and Fang Tian's lucky escape, both gamers went offline and have no idea what has happened since then. Luo Jianbin shakes Fang Tian out of his trailing thoughts, telling him he'll get an autograph from Shen Lolo for him too in the future. Luo Jianbin goes on to reiterate about the esports competition. They're recruiting and he wants him and his pal to sign up. Luo Jianbin leads Fang Tian to the basketball court. Qian spots the pair out and beckons them over. With sign-up sheets in both her hands, she asks the guys to quickly sign up. Luo Jianbin expresses he's heard the numbers of recruits is double the previous year. Fang Tian uses the opportunity to ask if there's anyone with the name Long Sun in the esports club. Both Qian and Luo Jianbin have never heard of such a person, and asks if this is someone they're supposed to know. Fang Tian waves off their curiosity. Inwardly, he wonders. Someone he doesn't know has passed him a piece of paper with a mysterious name on it and a message on it. What could be this mysterious person's motive? A man and a woman seated in bleachers analyze a list. They are 3 masters from the school who can start the free mode. Overall, the school offers a strong team. The woman refers to the man as coach. She tells him yes, Xueyang, one of the masters, is quite talented, but he also has some serious character flaws that could interfere. For one, he doesn't come to club activities to participate. The woman is worried. A lot of seniors have graduated and she isn't sure the school will make it to the quarterfinals without quality new additions. The coach checks his list again. He wants to know who Fang Tian is. The woman, Qinyue, updates him. Fang Tian is a newcomer, a transfer student, and a good candidate for the free mode. The coach concludes the school now has 4 able players and she should be more confident about entering the quarterfinals. Qinyue makes some further analysis. Whatever team they build will rely on cooperation and not just individual strength. Xueyang isn't much of a team player, and Fang Tian seems a bit rusty. From what she's heard, he isn't high level and she's not familiar with his skills. At this point, the coach shouldn't be so optimistic about the quarterfinals. The coach sees it otherwise. Fang Tian might be a bit rusty, but nothing they can't cultivate till he reaches his full potential. Qinyue lets the coach know that indeed that's why he's here. With the coach's help, the school hopes to have a ready and trained enough team. The coach decides the final decision will be made after they've watched the game. Meanwhile, Fang Tian reaches the front of the line. A senior named Mudong attends to him. Mudong takes note of his file. He's a member of the Star Guild and became a member at just level 20. It's an extraordinary achievement because the Star Guild is a big deal with huge requirements. He's also a transfer student that has only just started the year with them. Okay, straight to work. Mudong lets Fang Tian know the main purpose isn't to level up or fight for equipment. Over here, they pay more attention to PvP ability. Fang Tian doesn't know what PvP ability is, so Mudong explains that PvP is a battle between players. After the registration, new and old students alike will play a single or multiplayer battle. During the battle, players can analyze each other's strengths, weaknesses, and tactics. Mudong then challenges Fang Tian to an NS1 game. It's game on. There's one thing though. Fang Tian is nowhere to be found. After a few seconds of looking around for Fang Tian, he concludes that the assassin must have used the stealth technique. Mudong knows that he must keep an eye out for the sneaking assassin. That's the only way to keep himself in control of the game right now. Meanwhile, our sneaking assassin, Fang Tian, analyzes Mudong from a distance. He seems to be of a swordsman type that's different from axe battle and big sword battle. His character type has both output and control. However, with the little flaws he notices, Fang Tian concludes that Mudong must be a rookie. Underrating your opponent? Big mistake. Fang Tian manages to avoid Mudong's watchful eyes and hit him with his gouged blade. The effect of this blade stuns Mudong for 3.5 seconds, leaving him with dizzy eyes and making him unable to move. It's an untested skill that the assassin tests out. Testing out new skills in a battle like this? The audacity! The usefulness of the skill is to disturb the rhythm of your opponents while you buy time for yourself. With Mudong still stunned, Fang Tian stabs the man in the back, reducing his life by half. He gets cocky at this point, but he should know that Mudong isn't just a rookie. Mudong manages to free himself from Fang Tian's grip, and then he takes out his sword and skillfully begins to swing at the assassin. Fang Tian dodges most of the sword blows, waiting for an opening to test out a new move. Deciding on which move to test out must be a huge task, because it distracts him and he can't dodge an incoming lethal blow from Mudong. And it's over. Mudong wins the NS1 battle. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Shimao and Qinyue watch the fighters battle it out. Qinyue is impressed by the level of the battle, especially after seeing Fang Tian stun Mudong with his gouge blade. Shimao and Qinyue analyze Fang Tian's type of fighting. He pursues a violent output, and his strength could be greatly improved with training. In the end, they both agree that they might have underestimated the young man. Fang Tian and Murong then take off their headsets and are back to the real world. Murong cheers Fang Tian up, recognizing that he wouldn't have won the battle if not for his professional mode advantage. He also hopes that Fang Tian can join the team soon. Meanwhile, Fang Tian knows exactly what went wrong. He didn't finish off his opponent when he had the chance. Instead, he got complacent and started to test out new skills. He recognizes that he's been too comfortable recently, and that he must find a way to stop that. Fang Tian's reflective mood is interrupted by Luo Jianbin and Tang Qian. Well, mostly Luo Jianbin. Luo knows that Fang Tian could have won the game and wants to know what happened, but Fang Tian insists that Murong is just really strong. A distraction from the game system saves Fang Tian from hours of explanation. Luo Jianbin calls it an earth-shattering event. Earth-shattering could be taken literally, because a huge explosion just occurred in the Lost Valley and reduced the whole place to rubble. After the explosion, the entire valley was razed to the ground. Many players thought that there was new tasks, and they took risks to explore. But unfortunately, no one received any new tasks. Fang Tian is thankful for being able to escape just in time before the explosion occurred. How else would he explain what he was doing there? Luo Jianbin points out that Shan Luoluo had a live broadcast the previous day, and her location was somewhere around the Lost Valley. Could the explosion have something to do with the Star Guild? Of course, there's no way Fang Tian would answer that. He excuses himself from their new trial and recruitment process, saying he has something else to attend to. With his companions off his back, Fang Tian goes back into the game and straight to the Lost Valley to see things for himself. And boy, that is one huge explosion. He doesn't know what happened there or what happened to the group of people that saved his life. Just then, he receives a notification from the system. It's a message from Shan Luoluo giving him the teleport coordinates of a location where he needs to be. It's the Withered Bone Swamp, a level 55 leveling area with poisonous miasma. Fang Tian wonders why Shan Luoluo chose that location. The monster area isn't even suitable for priest leveling. Nevertheless, he was summoned and needs to go. Fang Tian gets to the location and it's a busy one. There are lots of strangers there. Some people advertise their goods, while others just kick back and lazily chit-chat. It takes him a while to find Shan Luoluo in the crowd. This time, she's not alone. She's assembled a whole team. Luoluo briefs her team on the mission for the day. Their task is to clean the Herbaridium Cordata and Scarlet Ring. And finally, to help the newcomer, Fang Tian, spawn monsters. The members of the team welcome Fang Tian and look down on him for the most part. They ask him to stay away from the battlefield, because group attacks can damage team members, and Fang Tian's level isn't high enough. Fang Tian is participating in a teamwork of players to clean the monsters for the first time. Their opponents are level 53 scavenger swamp worms, and the group truly lives up to their billing. The 6 fighters form a circle and send joint attacks to the monsters. In no time, Fang Tian starts to receive notifications that the completion of his spawning mission is moving rapidly. Teamwork makes dream work, eh? At this rate, he'd be done with the mission soon. He still has 2 missions left, so he decides to get the jump on them. He asks Shan Luoluo for possible locations to find a level 20 or 30 monster. She directs him to the Ghost Tower. I'm no expert, but Ghost Tower doesn't sound like an ideal place to be. Meanwhile, back in the real world, someone is watching Fang Tian. It's Tang Qian, and she's on the phone with her father, Tang Rang. The commander asks how Fang Tian is faring. Tang Qian tells her father that the boy is doing okay, specifically pointing out that he's very talented in games. She doesn't get the reaction she expects from her father. Instead, the commander is oddly quiet. She asks what's wrong, but he doesn't give a direct answer. He gives some pieces of advice and hurriedly hangs up the phone. Tang Rang hangs up and his worker gives him details of their investigation. The explosion is thought to be caused by the Iraqi Moon Organization. They imprisoned 3 high-level NPCs and let them use Nian on ordinary players in normal mode. This is the first abnormality in that valley in 3 years, so it's a major concern for Tang Rang. But this doesn't interest him as much as what the worker tells him next. According to her, Fang Tian was around the Lost Valley around that time. Tang Rang is perplexed, and after deep thought, he promises that he won't let Fang Tian take the same path as his father. The cruel orcs have assembled once again. Every year they launch an orc frenzy to invade the human empire and plunder our food. This time, the king decided not to endure. The lord of the ruined city obeyed the call and set up a ghost tower outside the city gate. Various creatures' souls are sealed in the tower, and the higher the number of layers, the higher the level of the monster. On every 10th floor, you can encounter boss level monsters guarding the tower, and you can get a warrior medal by defeating the boss. Now, warriors are summoned to defeat the orcs, hence the mission of the ghost tower. Fang Tian carefully listens to the recruiting instructor. He wonders why the old man keeps talking about information he doesn't need. According to the instructor, there are lots of rewards for those who prove themselves in the tower. Fang Tian is tired of listening to the instructor speak, so he just asks how much would get him into the tower. As Uncle Hubbard says, Money solves a lot of problems in this world. He pays the instructor 25 silver coins to get a letter of introduction. He confirms from the system that he's completed the first mission. Looks like team spawning is really efficient. Fang Tian sets out on his way to the ghost tower. He passed lots of traders that are selling items, but these don't concern him. While he still walks, an armored man suddenly stands in his way and asks for his letter of introduction. Oh, this must be the ghost tower then. He hands his letter over to the guard, who then thoroughly scrutinizes the letter. The guard is satisfied and gives Fang Tian information about the tower. According to him, you can repeat your silver coin payment an unlimited number of times. Only the highest score will be taken into account. These terms and conditions make things too easy. With these terms, he can easily complete the third task in the same location. He enters the ghost tower, which feels like he's floating in space. Once he gets in, he's welcomed by little wild boars. Are these supposed to be a problem? He easily gets rid of them. It looks like the old man was correct about the difficulty increasing with each layer. This first one is too easy. 10 floors later, he continues to face wild boars. It's almost getting annoying now. On the 10th floor, he expects to see the wild boar king. Instead, he finds 2 wild boar kings. This could finally be a challenge worthy of Fang Tian's skills. The young assassin is disappointed by what he thought would be a real test. All these boars do is savagely rush back and forth. Maybe they would trouble certain people, but Fang Tian easily takes off their heads with a swift blade motion. Unfortunately, the system doesn't let him attempt the third goal immediately. Oh well, what's the rush? He decides to leave and come back later. The next day comes and Fang Tian is back to school. As usual, Luo Jianbin isn't far from him. He asks Fang Tian if he's formed a team for the afternoon club team competition. Fang Tian has no team, so Jianbin asks him to join his team. As expected, Tang Qian is not just a member of his team, she's the leader. Fang Tian has never played a team match and he doesn't want to drag his team down, so he tried to politely decline. But his new teammates don't want to hear anything about it. In addition to Tang Qian and Luo Jianbin, his team also has a mage and a heavy axe. Both are violent battle types. The team is set, and it's now time to talk tactics. Even though it's a temporary team, they can't walk to the battlefield unprepared. Their team contains 2 wizards, 2 fighters, and 1 assassin, Fang Tian. Fang Tian's assassin skills can help him disrupt opponents' rhythm and stop them from releasing skills for about 5 seconds. With that advantage, Tang Qian asks him with keeping the other team's priest at bay, preventing him or her from interfering in the fight. The other teammates decide to attack the mage with the highest output first. The rest can be resolved after that. It's a roughly drafted plan and not well thought through, but the game is starting soon, so they decide to go with that plan. The stage is set for the players to do battle. All that remains is their arrival. Meanwhile, Qinyue checks through all of their inventories and statistics to make sure everything is ready for them. Shimao admires her attention to detail in recording every game. Qinyue says that with individual and team records, she can explore the characteristics of each player and can find members who can cover for the shortcomings of others in their team. That's the point of a practice session, isn't it? According to Qinyue's stats, team competitions have always ended in defeat for the rookie team. That's not the most encouraging stat one would like to see. The next match is about to begin, and the players have arrived. It's Hero Forgeness versus CDD. Wait a minute, who the hell names their hero Hero Forgeness? As you might have guessed, it's none other than Luo Jianbin. He insists that it's a smart tactic to divert the opponent's attention. Well, let's see how it works out. The players put on their headsets and are transported into the virtual world. Now the match is truly about to begin. After a quick analysis of their opponents, Tang Qian discovers that they have 3 fighters, 1 mage, and 1 priest. That's excellent, as it means their previous plan could actually work in this battle. She gives last-minute instructions, and the team spreads out to fulfill their tasks. First of all, Heavy Axe and Luo Jianbin rush at one of the fighters from Team CDD. This causes a distraction that lets Fang Tian slip away like an assassin. The fighters from Team Hero Forgeness land a couple of hits from Team CDD's fighters, so their team's priest must now interfere with her holy prayer. But she doesn't come. What could be wrong with her? Well, a certain assassin had snuck up on her and used his gouge weapon to stun her. Fang Tian assures her that she's not going anywhere near the battle. It's a classic chess move. Fang Tian has the opportunity to finish off the stunned priest, but decides to have his fun with her instead. After all, the task is simply to take her out. With the priest out of the battle, Hero Forgeness wizards can now carry out their full plan. The mage sends her fire tongue to the helpless mage of Team CDD. Luckily, one of the fighters can protect her with a shield. It's easy to defend against one fire tongue, but how about multiple fireballs raining down on you? Tang Qian and her team's mage combine to produce multiple fireballs to send at Team CDD's mage. The battle is getting heated now. The fighters from Team CDD want to intervene, but a strong heavy axe, together with Luo Jianbin, keeps them occupied. Team CDD's mage now realizes that she's the main target of their opponent's attacks. It's too late to dodge the fireballs, so her only option is to create an ice rock to protect herself. Her ice rock can resist 10,000 points of damage, but it can't last forever. It's a good thing her team has a priest to restore her health. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like the priest is still kept in check by Fang Tian. Their team is on the ropes now. The priest is also stunned, literally and figuratively, by the fact that Fang Tian chooses to control her instead of directly killing her. Fang Tian reveals his team's tactic of just having to keep her away from the fight. What harm could it do? She's too stunned to cause any real damage. At this point, the mage's ice rock has taken more than 10,000 points of damage, and it succumbs to the fireballs that keep on raining. She has no other tricks up her sleeve, so she's defeated and out of the game. With that done and dusted, the wizards look to see how HeavyX and Luo Jianbin are faring. From the looks of it, they're not doing too badly. HeavyX has 2 of Team CDD's fighters on the ropes. Together they finish off the remaining fighters from Team CDD. 4 players are gone, and the only one remaining is the priest. What is she going to do? Heal them all to death? The fight is over and Fang Tian's team emerges victorious. Meanwhile, Qinyu and Shimao are analyzing the battles as usual. Qinyu is impressed by the smart tactical approach of Team Hero Forgeness. They might be bad at naming, but they sure can think. They also praise Fang Tian's work in controlling the other team's priest, and Shimao goes as far as suggesting that Fang Tian might have had special training before. Shocker, am I right? Qinyu insists to show what Shimao meant by special training. Of course, he can't be too sure, but he insists that Fang Tian's pace, movements, and quick thinking to keep the priest at a certain range isn't that of a novice. In the end, he recognizes that Fang Tian and his teammates are good, and he gives his recommendation to let them join the club. Meanwhile, Fang Tian and Tang Qian head straight home after the victory. She can barely contain her excitement on the way home, but Fang Tian doesn't understand why she's so excited. The team they faced isn't part of the main force of the school team. They don't have a clear tactical plan and are average at best. What a party pooper. Tang Qian calls him weird and asks him to show a little happiness, but his master previously told him that an assassin must remain indifferent and never expose his heart. They get home, and Fang Tian goes back to doing what he does best. Almost as soon as he gets in, he receives several messages from Shan Luoluo. She says it's concerning his promise to build a gargoyle for her. Apparently, she now has all the materials needed and is currently at the Temple of Craftsmen. Fang Tian doesn't understand the Star Guild's obsession with gargoyles, but decided to go and help Luoluo anyways. She did help him in the past after all. After a while, he gets to the Temple of Craftsmen and meets Shan Luoluo there. When he asks why building a gargoyle is important, she says it would make one famous in one swoop and increase strength by 1 point. Also, the Star Guild is preparing to break through the 60-level dungeon debut. That could be why they need the small army. He still has to complete the task of the Assassin's Master at the Ghost Tower, so he must work quickly. She gives him 100 materials and he sets down to work. But first, he sends her out of the room, saying that she's a distraction that would affect his success rate. Okay, that wasn't weird at all. The real reason he sent her out is because he has a secret way to increase the success of the alchemy puppet. With only him around, he can use 100% mind to increase the success rate. It works out well, and the alchemy formation works much smoother than usual. Meanwhile, Shan Luoluo waits outside for Fang Tian. From her 100 materials and his projected 30% efficiency, she hopes to successfully formulate a simple gargoyle army. At that moment, Fang Tian comes out and says he's done for the day. He says he made 20 copies of the gargoyle. Luoluo is disappointed at the low 20% efficiency, but Fang Tian points out that he never said he used all the materials. The 20 copies he made were just from 30 materials. That's much more than she projected. Classic jaw-dropping stuff. Initially, he had told her that his production success rate was around 40 to 50%, but from the looks of things, it was more of a 70 to 80% rate. Fang Tian just plays cool and gives excuses, saying that she didn't watch him produce them, unlike the last time. Also, he has mastered the technique better than the last time when he was just trying to make them. Fang Tian, for some reason, was eager to head back to the Ghost Tower as it was 9:30 already. Shan Luo had other plans for her guild, and Fang Tian was a huge part of it. She asks him to help the guild collect medicinal materials. Trust me, she has seen his skill and knows he has mastered the technique well enough to collect Death Soul Weed easily. After a convincing proposal, Fang Tian realizes that making moves in this world would be impossible without money, so sharing accounts in a 70 to 30 ratio looks very appealing. He agrees and heads to the Ghost Tower for more assassin skill training. Back in the real world, Fang Tian is fast asleep in a Chinese class. The teacher calls out to him, asking him to submit his assignment, be attentive, or leave the class. Without care or concern in mind, Fang Tian leaves the classroom with an angry teacher behind him, yelling he shouldn't come back into the class without doing future homework. Walking down the hallway, he bumps into another student who's curious about the reason Fang Tian was outside. Fang Tian tells the student that he slept in the Chinese class for class 3. The student laughs about it, saying that the teacher was the only one to not be messed with. He introduces himself as Shueyang and immediately bonded with him. Since they have spare time on their hands, Shueyang persuades Fang Tian to go to the esports club. On their way, they talk about the competitions and what exactly they are going to watch. Shueyang got information that the school team would be participating in a gaming tournament and the rival, Shiyuan High School, would be contesting against a lot of other schools. Fang Tian wonders if the school is really good, given that Shueyang was excited to see the school win, and also since they would be considered the school's rival. Little did he know that what he would meet would be disappointing. At the game station, the school esports team just finished a tournament with an old rival school that Shueyang was looking forward to watching. Shueyang is pissed that they got there late, but he still gets to see that the school team lost, as the rival school, Zhiyuan High players, are being interviewed as the tournament winners. He gets more ticked off when the rival school's players make snide comments about how poor the school players were, just in a bid to instigate and hurt the players. Seeing this, Shueyang plans out something and whispers his plans in Fang Tian's ears. The Zhiyuan High School players continue to badmouth the members of the school team, the 4 C's High School. They talk about how they were expecting way better than what they got to play against. This was based on the fact that some of their previous heads, earlier school team players that faced their rival, had been beaten by members of the 4 C's High. One of the arrogant players presses on, saying the school is just scum and their goal is being the top school at esports in the entire province, and also calling the school players clowns. The arrogant player soon leaves the group to make use of the restroom nearby, and Shueyang and Fang Tian, who have been eavesdropping and stalking the group, follow his trail into the restroom. The player's stomach rumbles and he isn't himself as he struggles to get into one of the restrooms. Suddenly, Fang Tian puts a bucket on his head, shutting his vision, and Shueyang follows up with a kick to the back, ambushing the player. Next, you could guess. Shueyang grants his promise of making the player regret all he said. Shueyang keeps hitting and stumping on the player till he couldn't take it anymore. More like till he felt he had completely avenged the school team. The player recognizes Shueyang's voice and reminds him that they have accounts to settle. The tension and beef are quite evident as both persons didn't see eye to eye. They have had quarrels and even have one right now. Shueyang leaves with Fang Tian to get food, and Shueyang is happy that Shu Tian got what he deserved. He thanks Fang Tian for helping him with his plan. Fang Tian is confused as to why he was so hellbent on getting back at Shiyuan High School when he isn't even on the school team. Shueyang is shocked by the question and soon realizes how things look from Fang Tian's perspective. Shueyang then explains that he was a part of the school's team earlier, but the team's coach didn't give him matches and tasks that match his skill level and experience. Getting small tasks, or like he said, wearing small shoes on the team despite his skill, made him get angry and leave the team as he quit the club. Though the coach has changed his mindset and approach, and even Xinyu has asked him to come back to the team, he refuses. His reason is that he would lose his face and feel shameless if he goes back. I guess for Shueyang, ego is a huge factor in his lifestyle. Fang Tian tries to persuade him to go back. He convinces Shueyang that there's no face and that if he likes being part of the team and enjoys gaming, then he should probably go back. Curious, Fang Tian asks if Shueyang is really good, as the team's income is very strict, and recruiting new members take a lot of scrutinies. As expected, this causes Shueyang to go on and on about how good he was back then. He took on Zhiyuan High School players and trashed most of them. He played a total of 5 games against the school, and the gist goes on. On getting home, he meets Tang Qian, who was worried about Fang Tian, as she met the class teacher and he was pissed about not finding Fang Tian outside the classroom. Fang Tian didn't care as his mind was on the pending events of the game he had to go back to. Qian urges him to go back to the teacher and apologize so that he wouldn't have any problems in the future. Fang Tian logs into the game to complete the last assassin mission ending in 2 days. When he's done completing the missions, he heads into the competitive ranking mode to increase his current rank by facing other players. The matches begin and Fang Tian takes his opponent out easily. The first, second, third, all the way till the competition for that rank range was over and done with. This was thanks to the fact that the opponents that Fang Tian had gotten up till now were newbies and rookies at the game. That's not competition when you think about it, but things will change on this next player. Fang Tian gets matched with someone of his class and skill level, someone who has an experience in the game, with the player tag Lea Fall. They begin the match and Fall wonders where Fang Tian possibly is. Fall is left to figure out what class his opponent is, the surest assumption being the assassin class. Soon enough, he is shocked when gargoyles appear above him and attack his already drawn shield. He has never heard of a summoner that could summon gargoyles and wonders what the origin of this player might be. Meanwhile, Fang Tian is just getting started. Unexpectedly, Fang Tian gets a notification from Shanluo to come to the Eyes of the Storm by the evening at 30 minutes past 7, as that's the time the group would be open. She also sent him a teleportation scroll to the Eyes of the Storm location on the map. At the set time, Fang Tian made himself present and is welcomed by Shanluo, who was already present with the group waiting for him. They soon begin the group quest, which takes place in the village of Twilight by the Wadi Talker. Twilight is guarded by elves that protect the Fountain of Eternity for generations at the top of Cliff Mountain. Such a treasured place would not be easily accessible, and if someone could pass the test and drink water from the spring, they can have a young life again. Fang Tian can read between the lines to know that the group's quest is to pass the test of the elves and drink from the fountain to get immortality. After the concise briefing, Fang Tian meets the captain of the group for this quest. Since everyone is present, Shen Luo suggests they start the quest. The captain says the group should start their 5-minute preparation as the quest would take at least up to 5 hours to complete. That's a surprisingly long time for one quest, and Fang Tian wondered what the quest would involve or require, but he was ready to participate. They follow the captain into the area the fountain exists through a portal. The system gives them hints as to areas on the map and what they had to do. They are meant to put some of the eternal water into a soul item bag. The water bag would also return forever as described. Next, they see the ancient tree in the village that is guarded by the elves, but it appears a bit strange. As usual, the normal response for explorers or players is to check out any strange appearances, and so they did. The captain of the group underestimates Fang Tian due to him being level 20 and with poor equipment. He asks Fang Tian to wait for them while they check out the tree and greet. If possible, communicate with the elves. The captain added that Fang Tian could try to join the quest again when they have gone into the village, taken up their mission, and killed the boss. Fang Tian is left to wonder why they wouldn't need him in their plan for completing the mission. More bothersome was the fact that elves normally did not like or want to have anything to do with humans, so we wondered if they had a way to get the elves to speak to them or to plan to bypass this difficulty. But no one said anything to answer the question he had. Shen Luo leaves after the captain, asking Fang Tian to wait and trust her and the captain. She assures him that they'd visit the dungeon twice a month to get familiar with the elves enough to speak to them. Fang Tian is left to explore his environment or just stay put as instructed. He takes a closer look at the tree, which would be a move that wasn't advised by the captain or Shen Luo. Though, on closer observation, he gets a trace of death and decay in the tree, even though it appears so healthy and beautiful. Strangely, he hears the muttering of an unknown language emanating from a foreign voice. As usual, he heads to check out the strange voice, intrigued by the possibility that the voice could be guidance that might help him discover things or information useful for the quest perhaps. Just perhaps. Now, let's go back to what happened in the Fall vs Fang Tian match. Fang Tian uses the gargoyles to distract Fall from his presence. When Fall concentrates on facing the gargoyles, he sneaks in behind him and takes him out just like he did to the others before Fall. With just one strike, he takes out Layoff Fall, winning the competitive ranked event. The system congratulates him on winning and completing the quest. Since he had not completed the dungeon quest he was invited to by Shen Luo, his experience points could not be added to his present points till he does. Participating in the dungeon quest would help him unlock the upper limit for experience points and level. Back in school, he is shown a post about a player named Anonymous, which is Fang Tian, gone viral due to his ability as an assassin and summoner to summon gargoyles to give mid-air support while they attack as well. Fang Tian gets worried as he wouldn't want any unnecessary attention and wants to keep his identity secret. Meanwhile, Xian wasn't so pleased about his class attendance, and she asks him to give up some of this personal game time to take up makeup classes for the real ones he had missed. She's also worried that the Chinese teacher, who was a key factor in students passing their grades, isn't on good terms with Fang Tian, to the point that she's even aware of it and how he truly doesn't care one bit. I mean, from a whole perspective, studies are less important compared to him completing his mission. Fang Tian doesn't agree with this idea as it would infringe on his time spent on the game, also coming between him and his true secret mission. Luan Bo sees Fang Tian as a cool master, worthy of his admiration, and he walks out on his teacher studies discussion. On investigating the source of the voice, he finds an elf sitting and playing an accordion. Soon enough, after creeping around, he mistakenly steps on a fallen branch, drawing the elf's attention. The elf sarcastically asks if he was just by the village and decided to go in and look around. Fang Tian answers, saying that the elves don't like intruders or humans visiting their village. This makes the elf ask if he's different from the group that just entered the village and is now trying to get to the fountain. Fang Tian truthfully answers that he is not different from them and shares the same goal with them, the Fountain of Eternity. The elf appreciates the fact that Fang Tian is honest and asks for his palm. The elf then reads his palm and sees that he has the breath of the Tree of Life. He also asks if Fang Tian has noticed that the Tree of Life in the village is about to wither. According to the legends, Fang Tian thought they couldn't possibly wither, and the elf confirms this as the tree was the source of the entire elven race. But now, the whole village is shrouded in the shadow of death. A year ago, this elf noticed an evil force appearing in the territory of the Orc Spirit Moon Wolf race, and that kind of force was responsible for eroding the Tree of Life they have in the village. The elf asks him to help the race investigate the territory and see what he can find out about the evil force. Fang Tian is fully aware that this quest and territory are very dangerous for him, as he was only level 20. The elf promises that if he accepts to help investigate and comes out successful, he would reward Fang Tian with little important things to boost his strength and level. Meanwhile, the others are busy battling the boss monster made by the elf in the village. Following the captain's command, they manage to land a critical hit at a crucial moment and at full output too, which enables them to take out the monster. Soon enough, all members of the group get a notification that Fang Tian had unlocked the test of the druid, a hidden mission apparently, as it wasn't listed in the guide. The captain regrets not bringing Fang Tian along, seeing that he is so lucky to unlock a hidden quest on the first try. Fang Tian gets to the orc spirit moonwolf territory and sees one of the guards. After much contemplating and considering his level and strength, he decides to sneak around and avoid being spotted as best as possible by the dangerous monsters that even he couldn't tell their power without gauging it through direct combat. He unlocks a new skill, Soul Breath, which enables him to hold his breath and increases his strength, is undetectable by magic unless the user is affected, and boosts the chances of not being spotted. It also gives him the confidence to secretly move around the territory and take out guards skillfully. With this as motivation, he approaches one of the guards from behind, carefully concealing his presence. After 2 steps, the sentry wolf perceives his presence, and this forces Fang Tian to go into hiding. Realizing that only 4 hours are left and he doesn't have enough time to wait for a clear entry, he attacks the wolf, but the wolf gets a sense of it and defends itself. The wolf proceeds to display the difference in their power, as its attacks were on another level compared to Fang's current combat abilities. The fight goes on for a short while, and after a series of avoiding the wolf's attacks, Fang Tian can land a sneaky hit on the wolf at full output. This luckily took out the sentry wolf for good, and if it didn't, Fang Tian was definitely sure that he would have been the corpse instead. After taking on the sentry wolf, Fang Tian decides it would be best to avoid fighting as much as possible. He gets near the gate of the camp and meets another sentry wolf guarding it, but this time with a warrior wolf. It would be way harder to combat this wolf compared to the sentry wolf. He couldn't take both on, and if he ran off, it would lead to being chased by a whole team. He tries to get close to the gate, but is soon perceived by the wolves. Fang Tian then hides behind a bush, confused as to what to do. Suddenly, the ground trembles and changes the whole area. The wolves who were about to find Fang Tian then fall to their knees, worshipping the rumbling with so much reverence. Fang Tian could not explain what just happened and why the wolf changed their focus, but he saw this as a great opportunity to get into the camp and took it. On getting in, he's left to find out where the source of the evil power is, as he wasn't given an exact location. If the camp is a big one, he was in a lot of trouble, as it wouldn't take long for him to be spotted without finding the source. He began a search for it and gets a prompt from the system urging his team members to seal the spirit in the village. In the village, the captain and his group have successfully sealed the spirit and almost completed the mission. Given that the rookie on their team just opened up a hidden mission and would get a ton of rewards from it, the captain wants to be a part of it and suggests they go back to the orc spirit moonwolf territory and assist Fang Tian, even though they have no clue the requirements and terrain of the quest, so they head there to protect him.